is going on, everybody? So excited that you got to be here. This is my group. These are my people. You are one of my people, and I appreciate you being here because if you're one of the folks that's hanging out at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday night so that we can talk about what the Bears can do at number 9 or at pick number 9, then you're just that guy or that girl. But moreover, let's start out with some business up at the top. So first of all, I'm going to take you through as much film as I can. My son, who's 17 months old, pretty sure he has RSV, and I know that because I'm pretty sure I got it from him. So I don't think I've got one in the morning in the tank tonight, as much as I'd love to. So we'll go through as much film as we can in the meantime, especially because I've had a whole lot going on at work lately, which is a good problem to have. And because of that, it means that there's a couple draft picks that I'm looking for. I'm looking to watch. So if you guys don't mind, I want to show off. Let's see. I specifically want to show off Dallas Turner. I specifically want to show off, let me see. I want to take a look at both Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas with you guys because I need to watch Brian Thomas and plenty of people need to watch Malik Neighbors. And then we'll see if we can get into Adunze. But I also have Keon Coleman pulled. I have, let me see, this game for Turner also lets us watch Anaya Smith, one of my favorite guys later in the draft at wide receiver. Then we can watch Brock Bowers. I think Brock Bowers would be a fun one for us to watch together. I've watched a little of him, but we really ought to get to know what he is, what he isn't. And not to mention, every time you get to watch Brock Bowers, for all us draft nicks in the chat, who does that mean you also get to watch? Come on. You get to watch a little bit of Lad McConkey, and that is just some fun tape. But so, let's see. Alpha, good that... Thank you. Thank you for mentioning Verse. I've not seen Verse put in the same category as guys like Turner, even Latu, though I'm happy to throw him in here. Let me get his tape pulled as we talk, but just because I might as well, right? I'll tell you right now, at least from what I've seen, it wouldn't surprise me if Jared Verse ends up very similar to Miles Murphy in terms of around where he's drafted. Look, I can't tell you exactly what he's going to be in the NFL, but it wouldn't surprise me if a run-stuffing defensive end that can pressure the passer but doesn't pressure him as threateningly as plenty of other edges of his type do ends up taking a little bit, getting taken somewhere between 16 and 20. Could easily be a guy that you trade back for, but you definitely write Demo that he is a hashtag Flus defensive end. If it helps, so is Turner, right? Because Turner looks, let's just watch him, right? But like you're saying, John, Verse absolutely was getting hype. He just was okay this year. Oh, by the way, first of all, let me switch up. Look at this, by the way. Hey, pat me on the back. No technical difficulties this time around. Love it. Butthead, how you doing? Let me see. Akusai, if Poles can't get a second rounder, he's trading back from 9. I think a trade back from 9 may be coming anyways, Akusai. I mean, especially if I think the Bears will take maybe 2 guys up at the top of the board that they really like. And if they don't get those 2 guys, it would not shock me if they're going back. I love the fact that we did this without immediately screwing up. Akusai, I've considered not getting sick, but what can I say? I just have fun. I just have fun being sick. Dallas Turner. It did get cool that we had a couple of flu games back in the day. That was like 2 years ago. But the flu game loses its luster when you're just constantly sick, but that's how it goes. John, if I had to guess on who Poles has higher, Adunze or Neighbors, look, I would guess Adunze, but that's purely because Poles seems like a size speed guy, and Neighbors has the speed, but Adunze has the size. And especially if you look at it as a complementary body type, it wouldn't. I actually would wonder, John, just telling you like I think it is, whether Poles would see it as a potential problem that DJ Moore and Malik Neighbors are hilariously similar. But CKFC, to be honest with you, I don't know. Like, if you told me that Poles thought that, to flip it on its head, CKFC, if you told me that Poles thought that Neighbors was so fast and separated so well that he has Adunze well behind Malik Neighbors, yeah, I'd believe that too. I really would. And I haven't dug well enough into both of them to tell you something really firm, because I watched a lot of the later receivers when I was prepping to go to the Senior Bowl. I've got to basically circle back around and get to the first guys, but that's at least what I'm thinking about. Evan, we're going to try to get into some LSU tape. Chicago, I would try to swing something with Pittsburgh. Now, if Pittsburgh gets Fields, obviously they're not coming up to 9. But I can't help but think that you're going to get Caleb Williams and then Drake Maye and then Jaden Daniels will get drafted at some point. I don't know if he's going to get drafted at 3, to be honest with you. I just don't know. I've got my concerns about his tape. We could talk about that later. But I will not be shocked. And I promise I would have told you this on Sunday. I would have told you this on Saturday. Now it's become the popular thing to say, so I sound like I'm in line with everybody else. But I will not be shocked to see J.J. McCarthy drafted around that Josh Rosen-y area, right? That like 8 to 12, except for the fact that the Bears are drafting at 9. So if we take a look at Tankathon, because this is what I think is certainly interesting, right? NFL Tankathon. When you look at where number 9 is, right? The most interesting part about it is that we can take a look at the teams immediately afterwards, and all 4 of these teams could feasibly draft a quarterback. Will they? Gosh, I don't know. Chris, thank you so much. Anytime. Is that Chris Armstrong? If it is, I really appreciate you. But so the Jets probably won't, right? But the Jets also won't trade down, because they probably need to take an offensive lineman to keep Rodgers relatively healthy. But Minnesota, checkmark, would want a quarterback. Denver, checkmark, would want a quarterback. Vegas, checkmark, they'd want a quarterback. And because you've got 3 teams that might want a quarterback, excuse my poor drawing, that means that if probably not Seattle. So it's really like Pittsburgh, it's Los Angeles, it's honestly, it could easily be any of these teams trying to jump the other. Like, if you wanted to look at somebody like Vegas, if you wanted to look at, I think the Rams would be fun for McCarthy, but I doubt it. Seattle shouldn't, in my opinion, Chicago fanfic, because I just really like Geno the more we're watching him. But Pittsburgh would think about it. And then, I mean, a lot of these other teams, like, they've got their quarterback settled. They're not going to think too hard. But 9 could be a nice spot to come up for a quarterback if you wanted one. And that's if JJ makes it there. But who's to say? I mean, let's see. If the Chargers draft JJ at 5, that'd be wild. I mean, honestly, it just would be. Like, I don't even know what would happen. But it'd be crazy, wouldn't it, John? I just think the further we get. So the Senior Bowl is always fun. The end of the collegiate regular season is always fun. And when we get to around there, a lot of people take the 2nd and 3rd round quarterbacks and they push them up a tier. Let's not forget Mike Tannenbaum came on to, I can't remember where he came on to then say, oh, well, watch out for Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker is about to be a 1st rounder. And he obviously was not, right? And so I would not be surprised if both Penix and Nix do not end up taking to the 1st round. I think they're just old enough. I think Penix has his injury flags. I think Nix has just been in college football for too long. So one thing I thought was really interesting, and eventually I'll see if I can get some of his work posted around here. Like, one of the best follows, even though he can be a little prickly sometimes on Twitter, is an account, relatively small one, called Start Kyle Orton. He does a lot of analytical work that is well above his pay grade of free, right? And one of the things that he did was take a look at, he's got a big old data sheet that he puts a bunch of collegiate numbers as well as film stuff into. Like, he does his film breakdowns too. I know we're a film channel, but one conclusion he came to the other day that I thought was really interesting was this idea that you need to take a college player's entire career into account. Not just his best season, not just his last season. You need to take their whole career into context, which I thought was really intriguing, right? Because you think about it and you go, oh, Trevor Lawrence, he was kind of good from Jump Street. Shocker. He's pretty good in the NFL. Oh, Patrick Mahomes, from the moment that he was a freshman at Tech, he was playing more or less like he was the last year before he declared. Shocker. He's good in the NFL. It's the Daniels types. It's the Nix types. It's the Penix types, where they've had this big step up very late in their collegiate career. Kenny Pickett, right? Zach Wilson, right? Trey Lance even, right? Where they weren't really established draftable prospects before their final season of college, where things can get a little dicey. And you might look at this and you might say, well, doesn't that describe Joe Burrow? And sort of. But Joe Burrow, you could argue the transfers and the lack of playing time hid whatever we thought he was, if that makes sense. And that's that's something that I find intriguing, is this idea that with both Drake Maye and Caleb Williams, you get players that at this point we can say confidently have been playing NFL caliber ball, like NFL prospect caliber ball, since they started taking snaps and they won jobs early, et cetera, et cetera. Bears Junkie, it's not explicitly about Daniels. It's actually more about Nix and Penix, because they're two that I would be very worried about if I was an NFL GM, compared to somebody like McCarthy, who, look, I'm not about to tell you it's the whole like all he does is win thing. It's more to say that he's good. Has been good for a little while. He ends up kind of betrayed by his own offense. And so his pro day, his combine throwing session, that stuff's probably going to matter a little more than it should if you're drafting JJ McCarthy. But he's a project that could easily become a real solution. The Twitter account is Start Kyle Orton. StartKyleOrton. And if you can put up with the fact that he's snarky as hell, he puts out a lot of really good information. But so that's the thing, Bears. Like, Bears Junkie, when I look at Jaden Daniels, the main thing you got to understand, like, let's talk about this, right? There's this smoking gun statistic that I think I would look at with Jaden Daniels that at least worries me. Now, Jaden is much better than those other two. Like, I've got him in a different tier than I've got Nix and Penix. If you don't, that's pretty crazy, right? But so let me see. It's one of these lists around here somewhere. Let's see if I can find this. Here, I'll pull it up over here, and then I'll pull it back. It's like how often the quarterback scrambles out of a clean pocket. Here it is. So if there's one thing that would worry me if I was a Jaden Daniels guy, did I seriously screw this up again? Did this not work? See, I have no idea. Finally, it's this stat, which I think I've shown on the channel before, right? But so the main thing that I would worry about if I was a Jaden Daniels fan, let's just talk about this, Bears Junkie. Like, that's the other thing. I'm an opinion, right? Jaden Daniels, effectively, his second read is I should run the ball. And you can tell when you look at statistics that show not only how good he is as a runner, but how often he takes off. In this case, scramble rate on non-pressured dropbacks. So this is how often do they run out of a clean pocket. And Jaden Daniels and Justin Fields are both pretty doggone high up on this list. And that's the other thing. Like, I remember watching Justin Fields. Look, there's a whole bunch of takes that I wish I could verify. Like, one of my favorite things about doing these streams, just so that we're both on the same page, right, is I love doing these streams because then at this point, if I have a take that ends up right or wrong, there was evidence I had it. And there are these Justin Fields breakdowns that I did not make because I don't know why, but for some reason, I did not end up making the time for them. So I can tell you what I thought of him at the time, and you just got to trust that I mean it. And this is what I thought. I remember one of my notes for Justin Fields that I thought was not a big deal at the time, right, was the fact that Justin Fields really didn't check the ball down, like, nearly ever. Justin Fields would run the ball instead. Justin wasn't a runner in college, but when he went through his progression and he said, okay, that's not there, and then he'd look into the middle and he'd say, okay, that's not there, he would run the ball. And he was so athletic that who cares? His rushing was a check down in and of itself, completely valid. I mean, especially it felt that way, right? But within that, it's like, I don't know. Because now that I've seen the fact that Justin has kind of let that progress up to the NFL level, for better and for worse at times, because Justin looks like an outstanding athlete, you're going to see more than likely the same with Jaden Daniels. That's the thing, Chris. Like you mentioned, Fields didn't run all that much in college. He ran more than you'd think he would, is really all I'm getting at. It's not like he ran left and right? I don't let me rewrite the narrative. It's more like when you go back and you watch these Ohio State games, it was 5-yard runs. It was 7-yard runs. Like, Chris, let's really talk this through because it's very niche and it's very specific, right? Like, Evan, you mentioned that Fields gashed teams for huge gains. through the air, usually. Like if you go back and you watch Fields' Nebraska game, it's not him pulling the ball down and ripping off massive gains the same way that Jaden Daniels has, right? Jaden Daniels gashed teams much more with his legs than Justin Fields did in school. Fields did it occasionally, but Chris, where you really saw Fields as the runner that he ended up becoming in the NFL was just on these plays where he'd squeeze out of the pocket, he'd go pick up 10, 15 yards, and he'd hop out of bounds. That's it, right? But at that point, it's not really to make this one better, one worse than the other, right? It's just pointing out the difference in play style. Whereas guys like, I mean, if anything, you could say maybe this is worrying about Drake Maye too, because it sure looks like he'll pull the ball down and run when he gets the chance to. Look, I just really appreciate the fact that when you look at this crowd right here, Michael Penix probably a little too low, right? But you end up with CJ Stroud and Caleb Williams, and I guess JJ, if you want to go there, near the bottom of the list. But I'm not trying to draft JJ McCarthy. I'm not really trying to draft Bo Nix. I just find it interesting the way that these statistics worked out because they kind of match the eye test, right? And that's really all I'm getting at is they kind of match the eye test. And if your numbers don't match the eye test, what's the point of the numbers? So let me see. What did Matt Waldman say about him? Oh, didn't like him at all. Redmond, I think that Drake Maye is just a funky guy. I cannot believe I said it that way. Like, I think that there's some people that aren't going to be able to explain the fact that they feel like Drake Maye doesn't have the same killer instinct that a lot of other quarterbacks do. Drake feels to me like he's got his hand held by his offense. I think, and I've said this a lot on this channel, I think that Drake Maye is one of the most aggressively well-coached players in college football. And I mean that very positively, right? I think Drake takes to coaching, is most coachable, another good way to put this, where it's like Drake does what the coach asked him to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that lack of creativity seems to bother some analysts, right? Because they almost see a robot, they don't see agency. The thing is, I'm not normally one for robots. This robot is really good. Like Prabhat said, and I think this is hilarious. Prabhat says he plays like the Madden CPU. He plays like the Madden CPU on maybe not all Madden, but whatever the all pro, right? He plays like the all pro Madden CPU. So you get over it. Like Davis Mills, et cetera, et cetera. Like it's funny, Evan, you mentioned game managers. I don't think that's fair because Drake will attempt throws with windows that other guys won't. So you get you get a lot of value probably out of Drake Maye through the fact that he will hit that shot throw that Tyson Bagent's just not going to hit. I tried to think of anybody, right? You may not get magic moments. You may not get creativity after the play. You may get plays that just go bust and go up in flames. You may need the rest of your team to offer you a little more. But who's to say? Like, Drake will make really excellent plays, and there's nothing wrong with having a quarterback that has a quarterback's limitations and a real hell of an arm too. But that's a whole separate conversation, I guess. Like Drake, at least, I think, when you look at guys like Matt Waldman, I don't think Matt needs him to be a runner. I think that Matt sees that Drake doesn't always know what he's looking at. The coach told him, if the defender's here, then you're throwing here. And that's what he did. And then you get to later ends of games and that ability to will your team to a win, it doesn't feel like Drake has that. But we saw the same with Justin Herbert. I mean, it depends on what you think of Justin Herbert now. Like, I can't believe that Justin Herbert is a controversial discussion, but you do you, NFL populace. Like, whatever you want to believe, you're totally willing to believe. But I tend to think that, at least from what I've seen with college football to the NFL, that killer instinct isn't a translatable trait. I wish it was, but at least from what I've seen, yeah, no kidding, MJ50 sucks. At least from what I've seen, a lot of the quarterbacks, like I thought Baker Mayfield had killer instinct in college, and in the pros, it's less so. Right. I thought Patrick Mahomes, while amazing, didn't have the same killer instinct that he does now. It's as you mature, you change. As you change, your ability to will your way into different parts of games changes with you. And so I think there are pieces to this that we can say he's a good prospect, but we just can't say we know what's happening. Right. But Mark Collins, I do think Drake had to play some hero ball. Absolutely. I also tend to think that the talent levels are a little more even than meet the eye. Of all of the of Caleb Williams and Drake May, I think Devontae Walker was probably the best receiver that either played with. I don't know the lines well enough to tell you which one was the best, but I can tell you both got bullied in plenty of cases. Jordan, how you doing? Everybody, how you doing? I hope everybody feels good, sits back, has a good time. Like it's fun having these streams. It really is just getting to hang out, talk through some ball, right? I'm going to give you guys a couple of first impressions. We're probably not going to we're probably not going to watch a million of these games. Jordan, you're nuts. I think that Brendan Rice is a fun player. But I think that Devontae Walker has the size and speed that make him a definitively better NFL receiver and college receiver at that point. Brendan can make you think he'll do more, but I thought Brendan let them down just as often as he made a play for them personally. I think that Brendan might be able to get better, but and to be clear, I don't like Tez. I just think that Brendan is probably somebody that's going to get taken in the late third, whereas I think that Tez is going to be somebody taken in the mid-second round. And I guess I figure if you're going to get taken higher than the other guy, that makes you better. But they obviously played their roles very differently. Tez is one of those guys that you feel like he looks like an X, but he's going to end up playing like a Z. Brendan is a true X, and you need an X, right? But it's an interesting discussion nevertheless. Like, by no means do you have to agree with me. I think the NFL is going to see that size. They're going to see that speed. And they'll overlook the fact that at the Senior Bowl, he could not catch football for a litany of reasons, and tight coverage seemed to really bother him. I would be worried about Devontae Walker if it was me, but who knows? Maybe he goes to the NFL and dominates. You guys down to watch some Alabama defense? Like, let's see, you probably already answered this, but if Neighbors and Adunze are there at 9, who do I like better? Honestly, Phantom, I don't know. Like, what if I said they're both really good? Like, I really do. I think they're both very different. I think that the Bears probably would see. It's so funny because the more that I watch Adunze, the more I wonder how Adunze is going to test. Like, is Adunze really fast? Is he? Or is he just pretty fast? I think Neighbors is going to blow the combine socks off. I think we're going to get some sweet spider charts out of a guy like Neighbors. But like you're saying, new poster, it's one of those where I'd probably take Neighbors personally, but who knows? Maybe the NFL makes the decision for us. Like, man, Jordan, if that's the case, good on Brendan Rice. If he really does that, that's amazing. I wish I saw more of that on tape. Let's see. Brendan, what do you think we're doing, yo? Let's dive in. Let's watch some tape. Okay? So we've got A&M pulled up here when it does, let's see, Phantom. I don't know how realistic the prospect of Brock Bowers is. Hopefully we'll get there, right? But I want you guys to watch Dallas Turner, number 15, and I also want you to watch. Is he 0 in this? Let me see. And a whole lot of college football. Our lads is punching in the Our Lads depth chart and then watching the game and then being able to have a conversation with your friends that thought that their football season was dead and buried, and you bring up a weird game from October and you go, hey, I just watched them play Alabama. This guy played really well. And they go, yeah, I guess he did. And you go, yeah. That's what it is to study draft tape. Like, I end up catching up with people well after the fact. All right, so 15 is Dallas Turner. You should take a look at this guy as we go through this game. Like, will he get washed out of runs in the NFL? I don't think so, Ravi. But I also think that when you watch Dallas Turner, you see an improving athlete. You see an improving player that looks to me like he's going to test outrageously well. You see length, you're going to see speed. His pass rush moves still need a little bit of work because I think he's pretty raw for a guy his size. At least he's raw for what I think he could be. But you watch some of these plays and you're going to see one of those edges that you go, oh, like watch this play again. Right? Where it's simple, but you see the arm extension, you see him break away, You see the athleticism flash. We'd love to see him come down with the like tackle there, but the movement, right? Like I always prioritize movement when I'm watching draft tape. Movement. Because things like, can we finish? Well, we can teach that, right? Things like, can he catch? Well, sometimes we can teach that. Things like, is he strong? Can we teach that? No, we can't, right? Things like, is he quick? Can we teach that? No, we can't. Are his hips flexible? Can we teach that? No, we can't. Why does the NFL care so much about the combine? Let me answer the great question that maybe you've never heard anybody answer. It's because movement is one of the only things that a hardcore coach thinks that they can't change, right? Cole Kmet is not going to be able to suddenly become Brock Bowers, but I should be able to teach him to block, right? And so that's the way I think a lot of these guys think. And so here we'll watch a little bit of Dallas Turner, and if he gets in the game, I'm dying to show you guys Ainias Smith. He's one of my favorite players. If he can last all the way to the 5th round, I don't know if he will. I was talking with a friend of mine that thinks that there's absolutely no chance of him doing that, but just so you know who this guy is, here he is. He's number 0. He's like 5'9.5", I think. He's 200 pounds, built like a running back, but so Velas type, I guess, but he does way more things as a gadget player that, like, he blocks, for instance. Yeah, he could tote the pill, but I don't really care about that. He's fast. He plays like he hates you, and that always wins me over. Like, if there's anything I love in a player, it's when they block and when they run like they hate you. And it's funny that Jordan Silvera in the chat here mentioned a guy like Khalil Shakir, because Khalil Shakir is exactly what I'm sitting here thinking that Ainias Smith could be for whatever team takes him. That 3rd wide receiver, maybe 4th, that ends up carving out a very real role within your offense and ends you up with a really productive player. Phantom, you're absolutely right. I did love Darnell Wright's tape. Can you tell? But so here we've got crossing route. Ainias is the one doing the pick. So if you want to talk about dirty work, one thing that I also think is pretty funny is that they'll put Ainias Smith up on the line right here, which, again, we're talking about a guy who's like 5'9". He's going to play on the line, and he's going to be the rub guy. And so I love the fact that he's willing to do the dirty work stuff, got a lot of experience doing it. He's a team player when he needs to be, and beyond that, he can be an athletic threat that can help you like later in the game. At some point, if we get not bored, but satisfied with watching Turner, I do want to skip to later where Ainias at one point blows the socks off of a coverage deep and catches a big time touchdown. It's a lot of fun. Like Ainias is awesome. He's fun. But so let's keep watching Turner because that doesn't matter now, does it? Here, I always keep coming back to DBs and wide receivers. We've got Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry in this game, but look at Zero hit that block. Look at this block by Zero. Get out there. Collision. Nice latch for what it is. I mean, he's a receiver, right? And then at that point, you end up creating an edge that your receiver is able to take and go get some yardage. It's not crazy, right? I don't let me hype him more than he is. I just see a useful player on the football field, and that always gets me amped up. Bradley Montero asks, Rob, how important is Turner in the run game? Seems to be important for Flus and Poles for edge. Pretty important. I mean, in the Alabama run game, he does a lot. Now, he's an outside linebacker, so he does do both, right? But in the run game, he's by no means weak, though I'm not about to pretend to you that I've got a full-fledged scouting report done on Turner. Like, he's not somebody that I know expertly. I have watched this game, and when I was watching this game, I was mostly focused on the guy who, for crying out loud, they are willing to line him up as an end line guy. I mean, again, like Jordan, it's so funny. Yeah, I hype him up. The Texas A&M coach is willing to line him up like he's Equinemius St. Brown, and this guy's 5'9" in the SEC. Lineman, and maybe that's a tight end, right? So tight end, extra lineman, Ainias Smith. That's the guy I like. Like on a jumbo set where we're pretty plainly running the ball, like go take that edge out, or at least try, right? Is he really that old? Not surprised. Oh, what did Turner do on that? I skipped over it. Went to war. Play didn't come at him. There's the burst. Man, it's like a WWE slam. Like, he's unblocked. Don't take too much from these plays. I always think it's funny because this is like YouTube fodder, but the quickness with which he can get on you is very NFL. Like, bang. Yeah, exactly, Phantom. It's like the athleticism is plain as day when you watch a guy like Turner. He's violent because there's just no way for him to not be at that kind of speed. I mean, he's just a dangerous player on the football field. But Alabama defense always does play mean and flies the ball. It can't exactly. I mean, what is the old joke? Like, draft the Alabama defender and just don't think that hard about it. It fits here. Let's see. Is Turner still not on the field? And neither is my guy. Yeah, they're giving Turner a series off by the looks of it. Oh, I think that's him. At least it looks like him. Could be wrong very easily. Deep shot. Oh, yeah. You love that kind of stuff, right? Like, so they do play him as an outside linebacker. Let's see. Braswell. Let me see. Alabama. Lads. Because then there's the two corners that we could talk about too, if we're really talking about like everybody, right? Let's see. Braswell. Man, I do not mean to sound like, 41. Okay. I didn't realize we cared. I really didn't. And I don't mean to be silly. This is what I get for not knowing the entire class. Will Anderson is a beast. Oh, we care. I love it, the boy. I don't think he's quite on par with Will Anderson, but that's because I think Will Anderson was a finished product that was also really athletic, whereas Turner might end up being an edge 2 that can flex into more of an edge 1 role as he gets better, but that's if he gets better, right? 4P, we're just watching through some Dallas Turner and some is it Bill Braswell? I cannot believe I don't know. I'll look it up later. But watching some edge, baby. Right here. And then what? Ebiogbe is 92 right here. Okay. I'm going through and counting through stuff, right? The two corners are both playing. Plenty of guys to watch on this Alabama front. John, I think that it's harder to find an edge 2 than you think. Like, the idea would be that Turner could be an edge 1 in the sense that he's big enough, fast enough, long enough. But is he going to end up being a top 10 guy? I don't know. But here's at least a solid rep from him. Again, showing the athleticism, but not the finishing, right? Where you see a big step inside, athleticism to spin, the length to literally reach the quarterback, but then just gets washed away, right? If we find an edge in free agency, do you need to take somebody like him? Not necessarily. I mean, new poster, if I have not proved anything to you in my years as a film analyst, it's that I want to show you the tape so that you can make your decision. I'm not starting with this because this is who I want, so to speak. I'm starting with this because I think starting with the receiver, to be honest, is kind of cheap. Is that fair? Like, I want to start with edge because you should watch Turner before we just watch the wide receiver and go, oh my gosh, because that's easy to do, right? It would be easy for me to just show you the receiver's tape, farm the views or whatever. I guess I don't really farm views at all. Like, my content's it's not extremely viewer friendly. I love you guys, but I know that it's niche to the point of extra, like it's niche to the point of ultra niche, and that's because it's the content I would want to watch. Right here, we get to see a little bit of strength. from Turner, this is what you're really looking for, right? Like Turner is able to casually establish his hands and bang, win that first contact and drive to the quarterback. Now, is he able to make the rest of the play? Sometimes, but when I talk, was it John? Was it you who was asking? Is he really worth a top 10 pick? It's because I think the big difference between an edge one, like a true edge one, is being able to then get from here to the quarterback. And Turner's not there yet. Maybe he'll get there, but not there yet. But you add a guy like Sweat on the other side and him, and you've got a dangerous pair. Like at that point, you're looking at enough pocket crush, especially with my guy, Andrew Billings, that is able to just press the pocket in, and you're going to make things uncomfortable for quarterbacks. And you got to remember that, to be honest with you, okay, so man, this is not a take that I have processed at all. So walk with me. I think that there's a chance that if you're pressing on the pocket, so like let's get the pocket really nice and condensed, right? We've got Gervon Dexter, he's pressing right here. We've got Andrew Billings, he's fighting through a double team, he's right here. We've got Montez Sweat, he's crushing the pocket here. And you've also got Dallas Turner on this side of the edge, not quite washed down, trying to fight back into the play, but the quarterback is just in this very tight little spot right here. He feels like he's got to throw the football. And at that point, you might argue that that's the feeling that Matt Eberflus wants to create. Not a sack. Sacks are great, but it feels almost like what Matt Eberflus wants is to have his linebackers taking up key throwing lanes and have his corners press down into the flat so that then at that point, the quarterback makes a hasty decision. He's going to take this curl from the slot over here, and suddenly, boom, TJ Edwards jumps into the front, or like jumps in front and jumps in front, pulls down the football, etc. Let me see. What is it? Verse would be Montez Ryan. What are we talking about, new poster? Because you might be right. Like the Charles Leno, Braxton Jones that I'm talking about? Like, I'm very curious as to what you're thinking. But you mean the argument of how to get better at edge? I completely get it. Especially because you got to remember the other thing that I think doesn't help anything. So I am a believer that, let me see. How do I put this? I'm basically a believer that O-line is an ensemble position, whereas D-line is a collection of individuals. They are a team. They are a unit, and I get that. But an individual defensive lineman, like I'm trying to think of the guy's name. How have I forgotten it? The superstar for the Rams? Are you kidding me? How have I forgotten? Because I keep saying Andrew Thomas, and that's just not his name. It's embarrassing, but I cannot believe Aaron Donald took me this long to get. Aaron Donald, you could put him with three other scrubs, and he's going to make plays, right? It's kind of like wide receiver, where wide receiver is to defensive line, as offensive line is to defensive back. Because all the defensive backs, for the most part, have to make plays, because the moment that you end up with one or two defensive backs that are really poor, the whole unit starts to break down. Whereas on offensive line, when you end up with one or two linemen that are really poor, it doesn't really matter how good the other three are. It is an ensemble position in that capacity. And I'm with you, Evan, that the D-line needs multipliers like Aaron Donald, Von Miller to really come together, but also, at least in my opinion, I've seen singular defensive linemen shine in ways that singular offensive linemen just can't, right? And so you end up with a player, this is where I guess, new poster, I land, where I look at a Braxton Jones or a Charles Leno and I say, the cost to upgrade at left tackle is great. The value I get from upgrading at left tackle, especially with a gaping hole at center, is minimal. And so how do I maximize the value that the Bears get? And I just don't land on tackle. Last year we did. Last year I was advocating, hey, we need a tackle that we can put on his own so that we can chip for the other guy. We ended up landing him. I really like Darnell Wright. He's one of my favorite linemen on the line at this stage. But if you upgraded from Braxton, first of all, it doesn't help anything that I don't think Braxton can play inside. I literally think he's too tall. Like, he's too tall and too long. If you tried to put him at guard, he would just get owned by all the Andrew Billings types. It's like you're talking about, new poster. Giving ground is absolutely a problem. No, I agree with you. Like, giving ground is a huge issue. It's why when you do have a powerful edge that can create that ground, that you can do a lot of things with it. Because defensively, every scrap, every inch of ground you take, sheesh. Okay. That's pretty spooky. Phantom, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say never, ever to anything. But I do like veteran centers for rookie quarterbacks or younger quarterbacks, because I do think that rookies tend to be a little slower with protection calls and all the new rules and things that they're putting together. And if you have a veteran that's been there before, they can take a look at the front and they can say, okay, I've been in the league for 5 years. I've seen this before. Like, they're going to bring that guy. Like, hey, Caleb, be careful. By the way, Nate, you're going to be sliding out to your right. Like, let's get the back involved. Like, you'll see the center like turning around, gesticulating. That is where at least I see the value in a veteran center, but I wanted one last year too. So here's a sweet little inside move from Dallas Turner. It's so funny because when you watch a guy like Turner, I don't think that you're going to see technical ability like you're talking about, John. In this case, was any of this clean? Was any of this clean? Not really, right? It's just really explosive. Like, that right hand right there is scary. Or right foot, I should say. And then he just opens the gate. And at that point, why aren't we planting our foot and trying to drive after the quarterback? Who's to say? But we moved him off his spot because we're just really athletic, right? I see a guy in Turner that can use his arms sometimes, but Will Anderson can basically just throw people. I mean, we said this last year, right? We watched Will Anderson. Will Anderson is putting blockers on the ground in the run game, in the passing game, like he's an anime villain. Whereas Dallas Turner just seems like he basically like revs himself up and just goes. And he's just going to play as fast as he possibly can. And that's just going to be that, right? Here's my guy, Anais, splitting open on a deep dig. One other thing that I really like about Smith is, so Velus did not do this. Anais does a really nice job in his stem of being consistent. When you watch Anais Smith, I know we're just kind of peeking at him at this one point, but look at the stem and tell me that he's running a dig. You don't know, because he keeps it together until he splits. And then at that point, he's long gone. That separation that you get right there, whoo, is really nice. Like, talk about Anais as me talking about Lad. No, Lad rules. Lad's better. Right? But I just appreciate Smith, and he's somebody that I actually think could fall into the Bears' lap and provide a role that I think Ryan Poles wants. And he's way more technical than meets the eye, and he does all kinds of things for a Texas A&M offense that was looking for him to do all kinds of things. And the football guy in me gets amped up because he plays like he has a problem with you, and I eat that up like anything. Yeah, the snap is awful, right? Welcome to football. Like, let me see. Oh, the boy, good, because we're gonna probably watch some McConkey at some point here. I don't see why we wouldn't. Let's see. We got 41 right here. I don't think Turner's in the game. Oh yeah, 4P. Oh yeah, that air raid loves screens. You get certain looks, they're just gonna screen into it under all circumstances. Thank you. I appreciate that you appreciate it. I really do. Because I would rather, like, so one thing that you'll see the more you watch, I guess, my stuff, and this is true on Twitter, this is true on YouTube. If you go back and you watch any of the videos that I still have on Second City Gridiron, you're going to see this too. A lot of people are going to build videos where they hit you with the play, and then they hit you with the broadcast angle, and then they hit you with the other broadcast angle, and then about 4 minutes later, they hit you with the same play because they were making a 13-minute point, like about whatever player they were talking about. And me personally, I cannot bring myself to do that. If I wanted to pop on YouTube, that's what I would do, right? I would just recycle the same couple of plays. Instead, I end up watching like 9 games for the of most of the guys that I end up making a video about, because I just need to get more stuff. Like, if I can't show you 15 examples of that player doing that thing, how do I really know he can do it? Right? Just because he did it once what does that mean? And so I end up just going deep on some of this tape because for better and for worse, I don't know if I can't together a video of Caleb Williams playing 18 plays in structure in the Notre Dame game, then who cares that he did it once? Like truly, I mean, there are so many people that will post an interception and they'll be like, "See, the guy sucks," or they'll post a touchdown, they'll be like, "See, the guy rules," and it's like, let's get an absurd, a disgusting amount of film. You need it. Like you need these cut ups to be long as hell because at the end of the day, if you don't have cut ups that are long as hell, what point did you really prove? They played a lot more snaps than 3 snaps. So the fact that they looked really good on 3 snaps, what is that in the grand scheme of things? I could put together, you guys know this, right? I could put together a 12 play reel from this year that would make Justin Jones look like an all pro. We remember those plays, don't we? Like, we had that stretch in the middle of the season where it was like Justin Jones is going off in like the middle of the second quarter. He'd just have 3 plays in a row where it was like bang, bang, bang. And he'd just make a bunch of plays. But who cares? Who cares that you can put together a reel like that? It doesn't change the greater point. And so it's hard work and it takes forever. And I get that. But I think it's important. And so I'm glad when you guys are willing to hang out and watch streams like this because they're the stuff that I want to do. And so with Turner at the very least, I think that how he manipulates the half-man relationship with his offensive tackle, his understanding of a pass rush plan and what he's trying to do is really lacking. But as far as an athlete goes, I think he's an athlete that's going to end up maybe dang near jumping out of the gym. And so, John, if you're still in here, John DeLatalia, I think you asked earlier, do you think you could end up drafted in like the top 8? And I end up looking at somebody like Dallas and thinking, yeah. I mean, if for no other reason than somebody's gotta. Like it's edge in the NFL, for crying out loud. Edge in the NFL is a position that's always going to get attention. Always going to get attention. And the most athletic guy at the position within this, like within a class where there's just not a lot of options, that's the kind of guy that's going to end up pushed up the board. And I would worry about him because honestly, I don't want to overreact to a couple snaps right here, but you can see how raw he is and how much work you'd need to do. But I don't know. Is Braswell older? It wouldn't surprise me if he is. One thing that Turner does seem like he's pretty good at is at least moving the quarterback. Like 14's not moving here. I guess 14 probably moving because of him. But it's not like Turner's not getting the edge. So you give him a long time, and I think Turner can be a problem for you. Oh, we almost got a play there. Let's see. Braswell being older makes tons of sense to me. He looks like he's older, like better developed. The other thing that's funny is I'm starting to hit the point in my career where I'm starting to like all the older players because all the older players are drastically more polished. So like for instance, you look at a Peyton Wilson at NC State, you go, man, this guy gets it. And then you go, of course he gets it. He's 24. Like, or he'll be 24 come week 1. So of course he does. He's older. He's played more football. And so I do think it's funny when you're watching draft tape, remembering that the younger players are probably not going to look as polished as some of the older players, but that's just that. See, look at a play like this. Is this the NFL? Like, or would this work in the NFL? Well, yeah, right. But it's athleticism more so than it is a pass rush move. Now he gets up on him, right? Like, boom, bang. He shot out of a cannon sometimes. Shot out of a cannon. And that's the thing, John. You have to remember, like, the NFL, John. The NFL doesn't care if you're raw because all of those NFL coaches think they're the best dadgum football coach on earth. all think, they all think that dumb dingus coach couldn't get it out of him. I can. Like, it doesn't matter what Tyree Wilson did at Texas Tech. Oh, he's so big and he's so long, and when I get him in my system, he's going to be different. And they do the same with every position. Every position. Drake Maye might be a better day one starter than Caleb Williams, just based on the amount of work that you have to do, right? You've got to get Caleb to channel his inner hero into like littler moments, right? But but within that, it's like the talent is what drives the choice. I mean, I keep making the joke, right, that I'm turning into a Packers scout because I look at the chart and I go by what the chart says. But that's kind of the point. You look at a Christian Watson, you go, how many of these guys are this big, this fast, and move this well? Not many. High second round, right? That's the thing, Donald. I'm not trying to go freaky with Drake Maye. I think Drake Maye's got plenty of his own problems, and I've talked about them a lot, right? But within talking about the draft, there's a reason that I think Devontae Walker is a scary kind of prospect, because when I look at Devontae Walker, I see a player that's going to end up drafted pretty high because he's pretty tall and he's pretty fast. And you have to take him high-ish at the very least. And I don't want to. Like, I keep watching Tez and I don't love what I see. On the other hand, you want to steal Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey. Hey, raise your hand. Would you take Ladd in the late first? I would consider it, except I don't have to because I can get him at 50. Why? He's small. Like, I don't even make the rules. I think Ladd rules. I think Ladd is awesome. I think Ladd is going to do the same thing Cooper Kupp did, where come this time draft season, or like come 2 months from now, draft season, he's going to end up falling down the board because he's small. It doesn't matter that he separates. It doesn't matter this, that, and the other. It doesn't matter that he's physical as a blocker. Like the boy, you mentioned you're praying Casey doesn't take him. It just doesn't really happen. Like, he's going to end up in the second round the same way that Keon Coleman might end up in the second round because he's just not crazy fast. Like, and that doesn't bother me. And I look at that, and that's how you end up getting Tyler Scott in the fourth. Like, you get Josh Downs in the third. The NFL doesn't value these receivers. We can. We should. But the NFL doesn't value these receivers. And that can make them really fun value picks later in the draft. But I mean, the same attitude about height and speed and etc. Bradley, I'm so glad you mentioned him. Quentin Johnston, Lucas Van Ness, they were the same kinds of guys that I told you were going to get drafted pretty high. They did. I ended up pretty wrong so far on Quentin Johnston. I thought he could play X receiver. He cannot, seems like. But a guy like Lucas Van Ness, he's too big, he's too long, he's too fast. He's going to get drafted high. And he did. And so it's funny watching through the draft because you look at a guy like Turner, and I am struggling not to see him in the top 8. I really am, because say what you will, he's huge, he's fast. The NFL is going to mutter to themselves, I can fix him. All that stuff. Like, and then they're going to look back at his tape. They're going to look at 2021 and they're going to say, oh, see, he was worse then. He got better. And then they're going to look at his 2022 tape. They're going to say, oh, he got better. And then they're going to look at his 2023 tape and they're going to say, oh, he got better again. See, when we get him, he's going to get even better. And they're going to talk them into it. Like, every time. Exactly, Jordan. Carl Brooks taught me a lot about when you're that good with your hands, you get it. And not every player gets it. That's one of those smart football player moments, Jordan, where you realize that a player is playing a little bit ahead. And that's the thing, Prabhat. I'm not saying this to dunk like on Dallas Turner. I think Dallas Turner is good. I like Turner. But you also have to remember, Prabhat, that it is my goal when you watch these streams. Didn't we do this a little while ago? Right? Where I was walking you guys through Caleb and Drake, and I was so positive talking about Drake that a lot of people in the chat were like, wow, Robert's got a clear favorite here. And I love that. I hope that when you watch these streams, you think that I love every single prospect. And then I'll tell you, I'll say, I do love him. in the 4th round, and and that's going to be like way lower than consensus or something like that. You know what I mean? I think you have to be able, personally, when you're watching draft tape, to find a way to love the player. And if you don't love the player, that's a huge problem. And it's a big issue in its own, right? Um, it's all about value. Does the same rule apply for Chop Robinson? Mario? Yes. The idea that Chop Robinson is going in the 2nd is heinous. Guys with that speed and that bend just don't happen. I would be blown away if Chop isn't taken around 2025. I mean, we'll see, right? Especially because Mario, come on, right? You got to think Chop Robinson is going to have bonkers jumps, don't you? Like his broad and his vert should be pretty wild. His 40 might just be wild. Like I can't help but see. Well, it's less about like Jordan. It's less about do I like him, because you're talking about how they are as football players. I'm talking about who they are as athletes. Like it's a different conversation where it's pass rusher. It's pass rusher it's pass rusher in a draft that doesn't have that many pass rushers, but the NFL always needs pass rushers. And so I just tend to think that Chop's going to end up pushed up the board, especially because the Penn State coach loves him, which it always helps when your coach goes to back for you. Zach, you asked, how early would I take Jackson Powers-Johnson? If the Bears tried it down to 20, I would consider taking him. I mean, now granted, I'm going to tell you, look you guys did in the virtual eyes, and I'm going to tell you the Jackson Powers-Johnson looks to me like a guard that you can play at center, and I like that. The whole point with Jackson Powers-Johnson is that he's got a guard's strength at center. And so if you needed to kick him to guard, you could. Now, I would also take JPJ and I would sit him for the year if I could. Like, I have this kooky plan where JPJ would spend his first year as your 6th lineman, your first interior guy. He would be the guy that would immediately replace the first interior guy that would go down, right? Because I just know Tevin Jenkins is going to miss some time. I just know that Nate Davis is going to miss some time. One of them is, right? And if not, maybe the free agent center is just going to suck. And so then at that point, maybe JPJ takes it over. But if I got to choose, JPJ would get to basically be the understudy for the center and the first lineman in the game. But I just don't think the Bears have the patience for that. I really don't. And I don't think they're going to. JPJ's, what is it? His strength is just something else. And I mean, that's the thing, Jordan, right? Like Zach Frazier and Graham Barton, I think are just, I kind of think they're better, right? But I think they are better. With JPJ, I think you get a better football player, more so than center. But center is a strange play, or center is a strange position that way, where truly the NFL has some guys at center, starting centers like Bradley Boswell. Sorry to Bradley, that are just bad. The amount of undrafted and free agent, or the amount of undrafted 7th round and 6th round centers in the NFL starting today always makes me laugh. Guys that are just flat out underskilled, and then they're good at the mental side of the game, so coaches stick them at center, and then there you go. Jordan, come on, tell me Bradley Bozeman can move. You and I know he can't. Like Bradley Bozeman can barely get out of a phone booth, but he's good at what he's good at. Like as a gap run blocker, as a zone guy. He exactly. Jordan, we're on the same page. I'm saying, so that's the other thing, guys. That's the other thing. Okay. We've done so much talking and not enough tape watching, and I apologize. That's the funniest part about football. The more I watch football, the more that what gets you in my opinion, what gets you drafted is how well you move. What do you do differently than everybody else? Then in the NFL, there's a whole separate part where you have to actually be good at football, which is a completely separate thing, right? Like how well Kyler Gordon moves gets him taken in the 2nd round. If somebody watched the tape, if somebody popped open the Bears tape, the expectation should be that they can find the draft picks, right? Like Evan, you mentioned that Poles is RAS score obsessed, but this is real. Right? Shouldn't you? Would you guys agree? If we popped open give me a team. If we popped open the Tampa Bay tape right now, shouldn't you be able to tell which of those guys were drafted? Right? You should, in theory. You would expect that your team is picking guys good enough to stand out on tape, for better and for worse, in some cases. And that's certainly what polls does, right? You can tell the guys that they targeted in the draft because they do move differently than most of their compatriots, which I'm a fan of. But it's it's at least to me what drives a lot of their draft decisions, and I agree with the process. So I don't know. I just keep it as a core part of my eval, I guess. Who gets the pressure here? Is it 92 flying around? It is. Yeah, that's great movement. And the good news, Phantom, is that so are we. John, I'll tell you this because I am we're deep enough into the stream that I'm pretty sure he's not going to watch. So nobody go out there and tell him. But I've been really trying to hold it in with Greg. Uh, just because I feel like Greg is it has been so condescending towards plenty of people that I don't I feel like somebody should check him, but like in the simple process of checking him is going to bring in its own can of worms where then it's going to become a thing. It would become an argument. He would bring up the fact that he was the scouting director of a team. I mean, so let me use a stupid example. Stupid, but it's probably what I would tell him, right? Um, I don't think I see how being the scouting director of the Chicago Bears is a feather in your cap for why you understand how quarterback drafting works. If anything, wouldn't you assume that being the scouting director of the Chicago Bears is reason to not talk about quarterbacks? Like, I mean, at that point, I tend to think that I would look at it's just me. I mean, I'm making a joke, but I think I'm serious, sort of. Like, I'm not surprised that Greg didn't like Mahomes coming out of school. I'm not surprised that Greg didn't like Josh Allen coming out of school. I'm not surprised that Greg had Deshaun Kaiser as high as he did. Like, yeah, sorry, Zach. It's so funny, I guess, when I look at that because I think that the NFL's currently in a weird spot with quarterback in the league where what gets you drafted, what makes you good. No, not that's not fair, Jimmy, because I think Greg knows a lot about football. It's that the quarterback position is very strange, right? Especially the modern quarterback position, because this what would you call it? Greg Gabriel, 4P. Yeah, sorry, the boy. I had to. Like, it's just kind of funny. Like, but it it's it's a mess out there on Twitter. And I said this on the other, I said this on the BFR podcast. If you were there, great. If you weren't, I'll say it again. I'm really trying to walk the line a little better about understanding that there are a lot of people where Justin Fields means more to them than just the quarterback of your favorite team. Like, uh, he's a quarterback of my favorite team until he isn't. But at the end of the day, I think I see this stuff as pretty binary. I mean, I'm an out of town fan, right? Like I live in Dallas. I've lived in Dallas my whole life. If anything, people tell me that the Bears suck by default. They they haven't exactly proved any of the Dallas fans wrong, but people just tell me the Bears suck, and that was that. And so I had to pick the guys that I was going to go to back for, or that I was going to go to bat for, and that's just what I got used to. But it was so funny, right? I remember for the Shrine Bowl, I got the chance to run into a Chicagoan. He bought me and Nicholas Moriano like around, and I asked him about Fields or like what he would do at the quarterback position. He was like, "Well, obviously you have to keep Fields." And then I remembered that for a lot of people or like for a lot of the people in Chicago, Fields does mean more than just the guy. Like Fields means the guy. Fields is the franchise quarterback. Fields is the guy whose jersey they have hanging in their closet. Like I promise, I'm trying to be as uncondescending as possible because that's the whole point. Is that there's so many people that are condescending about this, and I know that there were a couple people that took a lot of issue with me being pretty matter of fact about Fields on Twitter, and I completely get it. I really do. Like I'm not about to sit here. I'm not about to sit here and pretend like it isn't easy to feel like Fields gets disrespected. I'm not about to sit here and say that this is an easy conversation. I think that there are a lot more people that know than want to admit. The same way we dealt with Mitch, right? But I also think that it's a very emotional thing, a very emotional thing. And like, I don't want to just be, I don't know. I don't want to be light on that. We're going to try to, as much as possible, avoid the conversation. Uh, just because I don't think that it's fruitful right now. I tend to think that that Ryan Poles, if I haven't said it already, I tend to think that Ryan Poles is aiming to get Fields dealt before free agency. I think that Fields' market value is going to do this, right? So Fields' market value is going to go up, and then it would go up again at draft time. But making the move here, which might be slightly suboptimal, gives you free agency where you know what you're doing, right? And you know what your draft board looks like. Could you get more on draft day, right? Maybe. But then you have to wait till draft day and you have to drag this thing out. And that may not be good for your locker room. That may not be good for your fan base. Like, I don't think that they care that much about the fans. But if at the end of the day, somebody meets the asking price here of, like, I don't know, a second round pick, etc., then you can you take the deal and you move on, right? And I'm with you, Mario. I do think it's a genuine thing. But so a Teddy B trade, when did the Teddy B trade happen? But so, gosh, I hope that they get 120, Donald, but I'm expecting a 2, right? Because we'll see, Jordan. What I'm not going to be able to handle is if they do go past the combine, then it is immediately going to turn into, see, they didn't trade him. They're sticking with him. And maybe they will. I can't say I know, but it would just turn into that. Like, gosh. Anyways. But so we mentioned something earlier. Oh, it was somebody asking, what do I think about the Merrill Hodge thing? To be honest with you, can I be honest with you? Merrill does not seem to like guys that primarily scramble, like even scramble to throw, right? If I looked through Merrill Hodge, like people talk about how he nailed Johnny Manziel's evaluation. First of all, so did 21 other teams. He got drafted at 22 overall. Second of all, I thought so did the overwhelming majority of fans. Did you think Johnny was going to be awesome in the NFL? I didn't at the time, and I was just a guy. I didn't even do all 22 at that point. I just watched the games. Like, look, when I listen to Merrill Hodge, I'm not about to throw out his valuation. I think he watched games and doesn't like what he saw. Like, Donald, you mentioned it was based on 6 games. Beyond that, Caleb has a bunch of games in this season where his relationship with structure is a little out of whack. Not to mention, there are plenty of games. You look at the Oregon game, you look at the UCLA game, etc., and the UC offense does not really score. And when your offense doesn't score, you're rarely going to look good, right? And so, of course, then you take the fact that he looks like a creationist, right? Like, Caleb Williams looks like he thinks he's all that. And if you don't like arrogance in your quarterback, then you're not going to like Caleb Williams at all. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if Merrill really likes a guy like Maye, thinks a lot of a guy like Jaden Daniels. I would like to point out Merrill Hodge also pushed back on the idea that CTE existed, so it wouldn't surprise me if Merrill's not letting on the fact that the nail painting thing might bother him more than he would be willing to admit. Right? You come on, guys. Football is a game with a lot of guys in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. Not everybody is going to be down with this Gen Z punk that posed in like a dress looking thing, paints his nails, and just does not seem to give a hoot. Like, Bradley, you mentioned that Merrill wanted to be in the headlines. I don't think people think like that. As somebody who does this, sort of, I can tell you that if I ever get to the point where I have 100,000 followers and somebody pulls me aside and I unintentionally give some massive Colin Cowherd level take, I will not do it to make headlines. I tend to think that when you get into this business, you are almost too busy to be inauthentic. And that's okay, right? Like, it is so easy. It is so easy. So easy for us when you aren't doing this to spend time saying, "Oh, they're doing it for headlines," right? Like, it's so easy to say that. Maybe it's just me because I can't do that. Like, I know what would get headlines, and even then, I can't push myself to it. But yeah, the other thing that was wild to me at Kusai is Froyland mocks Joe Alt at number one, but then so the Bears are going to stick with Justin Fields, but they're not going to trade down. So they're going to take Joe Alt, but then Sam Howell, who took almost exactly as many sacks, we're replacing him. We're not going to draft, what is it? So apparently offensive line was going to be really big on or what was it? Like, yeah, offensive line is going to be so helpful to the Bears that they just have to take the best one available at number one. But Washington is not going to take oh my gosh, Fashanu at like, they're not gonna take him. They're gonna take Caleb Williams. And I was like, okay. Sure. That's what I'm saying, Jordan. I'm saying you can tell me that it was all mathematic method, and I'm gonna tell you, no, it isn't. Like, just making the point. You know what I mean? That it just, there's no way that makes sense. There's no way the math lines up that quarterback is valuable enough to take in Washington's scenario, but it's not valuable enough to take in the Bears scenario, and the line is, as opposed to a receiver. Sure. Right. It must have been Kaiser Glenn. I could see that. But so Mario, is he a Lions fan? That's hilarious. All this to say, truly, that I look at the Merrill thing and, like, I just think it's an old school football head that doesn't like the kid who paints his nails, puts F Utah on his fingernails, like, looked disappointed, wanted to go home and hang out with his dog. Like, we could talk, I could mention all the pieces, but I think Merrill looked at him and thought, this kid is a piece of and you know what? And that guided his evaluation. And you know what? I'll tell you what. When you decide you don't like somebody, it doesn't matter what they do on tape. You won't like them. And that's the thing, Evan. I think he does see some of the flaws. And I think that if you don't see the flaws, you're crazy. I don't think anybody should pretend that Caleb Williams is a perfect prospect. He's not. But he's got some psycho tools. Like what he can do with his feet, what he can, or his release in particular. I hate it when people talk about arm angles, but the creativity with which Caleb releases the ball, the torque he's able to generate with just his upper body is pretty outstanding, if you ask me. Like, I think the way he's able to spit the ball nearly wherever he wants to is something else on both his 22 and 23 tape. Jibby, I would tell you that I think Drake, when he so what if I said this, Jibby? When Caleb Williams and Drake Maye have to throw without a platform, I think that Caleb's arm is drastically better. Then on the other side, I think if Drake and Caleb plant their feet, Drake rips the ball with way prettier trajectory and line than Caleb Williams does. I also think Caleb takes a lot of gas off the ball intentionally. Like, I don't think he's trying to blow the ball through people's hands, but it's hard for me to tell you whether that's a matter of he can't or he won't. So we'll stick with he can't for now, because I just haven't seen the other on tape. Though some of those seeds he throws over the middle are just like, whoa, my gosh. But that's a good way to put it, Derek. Where it's like you have to kind of combine both. And I'm with you, Erger. Like, I would just like to win, please. Can the Bears just win games, please? That would be nice. Let me open a root beer. Let's see. Donald, I do think, for what it's worth, that there are definitely worries. I don't know why there wouldn't be worries. I really don't know why there wouldn't be worries. But I think it's exciting enough to take anyways. Let's see. Best root beer brand? Man, I don't know. I haven't had mug in so long. Like, I end up just drinking A&W when it comes up. But I'm sure that there's other better root beers that I just haven't paid any attention to. That's what we do on this stream. We really break down. We really break down root beers. For Pete, I don't personally think that Caleb's deep accuracy is suspect, personally, but that's just me. I mean, when I'm watching his tape, I don't think he misses deep. I think that if anything, I think he's got more problems laterally. Like with Caleb, I think it's more when guys are moving right here. Let me see. Like I see when guys are moving left to right, sometimes he'll leave the ball behind, sometimes he'll leave the ball too far out. But when guys are stretching down the field and he's in rhythm with them, he tends to hit them. The other thing that I've seen with Caleb in particular is, so let's say that Caleb is throwing a curl route right here, right? Caleb will throw it right here. And if the receiver comes out of the curl and tucks it in too far, Caleb is throwing right here. Because if there's a defender, like if there's a defender here, and a defender here, and the curl route has him coming out right here, Caleb will also then push the ball right here, and he expects his receiver to go get it. Is that in the offense? I don't know, right? Is that a Caleb miscommunication? I apply the 40-40 rule every time I see one of these misses. But there are a whole bunch of scenarios where Caleb found the hole in the zone and threw right here, and the receiver, for whatever reason, curled and then like ran out of it in some cases because they tried to enter scramble rule. So kind of goes both ways. The boy, if you haven't been on the channel, the 40-40 rule, like I'm going to try to figure out, this is probably the only thing that I've created on the channel that I am legitimately proud of. But the idea is that anytime the idea is that anytime anything goes wrong, right? You take the player that you want to absolve, so the quarterback, and you take the player that you want to blame it all on, in this case, the wide receiver, and then you are left with, you give each of them 40% of the blame, right? And then you can blame the rest of it however you want to. But you default to the idea that football is a group project, that everybody is responsible for everything as a group, right? And even if I want to say, I think Caleb's right, this is the wide receiver's fault, then Caleb still has to own 40% of those incompletions. The original way that the 40-40 rule came up is offensive coordinator. Oh, it's Luke Getsy's fault. Well, at least the quarterback has to own some of it. Oh, it's Lincoln Riley's fault. Well, the quarterback has to own some of it, right? Exactly, the boy. Like the idea is purely to keep you moderate, right? It's to keep everybody moderate. It's to say, don't go blaming one person. That's never fair, right? Unless a running back fumbles and you go, it's all the running back, we can look, for instance, we can look at Fields being late on an out route, and we can say, well, that's definitely, like, I would tell you that that's the QB's fault. But 40% of it has to go to the offensive coordinator that didn't coach the footwork to be better. 40% of it might go to the receiver who doesn't get in and out of his route. Like it can be whatever you want, but the pure idea is that you might end up with the majority of the blame on a specific play somewhere, but it shouldn't stretch past about 60% because football is too much of a team game for one person to own 100% of a bunch of mistakes that are group project. But there you go. Like, that's the whole bit. Maybe, Robbie. Maybe I just talk them into it enough that they just jump off. I do think, for what it's worth, I would be pretty blown away, just being real with you guys. I would be pretty blown away. Pretty blown away. So the idea, Derek, would be for Urban Meyer, I guess, that you would have to assign 40% of the blame somewhere else. I've never tried to cut up the 40-40 rule, but I think you should. And so the idea there would be offensive line's going to get a chunk. Urban Meyer's going to get a chunk. Wide receivers are going to get a chunk because they were just bad, right? Anyways, I would be pretty shocked if Caleb Williams ends up being Dak. Like, I believe the big Kyler stuff before I believe Dak. Or maybe you could say better Baker, right? Like a faster Baker in some capacity before Dak. But that's mostly because I see Dak Prescott as a tall pocket deliverer that's frankly a lot more like Drake Maye if that makes sense. Like big but slower. No, I'm not disrespecting Dak, Jordan. I'm calling them different. Like there's not a world where I think that Patrick Mahomes, or there's not a world where I think Caleb Williams is Justin Herbert. They're just totally different guys. Totally different guys. Like just because like the movement and the way they move is completely different. Like I tend to think that Caleb and the way that he manages pockets is just a completely altogether different thing than you get from somebody like Dak. Dak is going to throw in structure because he needs to. Caleb is going to hold onto the ball because he can. Like Dak gone wild is a good way to put it. I just think Dak gone wild becomes maybe something really sweet, right? But we'll see. Like that's the other thing, Derek. Not only is he not super well, you say athletic. Rodgers wide out. Rodgers was athletic. Like, do we not remember? Do we? I can't be the only one who remembers early career Rodgers. Early career Rodgers ran around in the pocket all the time. Do we not remember? Okay, Bears fans. Do we not remember what it was like to watch Aaron Rodgers in like 2010, 2011, 2012, right? It's so funny we talk about Caleb holding on to the ball as this big issue. Don't get me wrong, it is, right? But sometimes it was the plays where Rodgers held on to the ball where you knew you were about to get kicked to the balls. Right? Like that's the thing, Bradley. Like I hear you, but it's more like if you go all the way back there, you'll remember that Aaron Rodgers, the moment he would take the snap and you would get to that third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh second in the pocket and he was still holding onto the ball, you'd go, oh my God, we're about to lose. And that's the thing, Derek. It's so funny, right? Where you end up looking at Caleb Williams. Who's to say Caleb's going to be successful in the playoffs? I have no idea. Like, can I be so real? If the Bears ended up getting a quarterback that was a regular season superhero and in the playoffs he clammed up and we didn't end up winning as many games as we wanted to and we ended up with one Super Bowl and we ended up with a couple of NFC playoffs like NFC championships that we lost, one or two that we won, I will settle for that. Like, are you kidding me? There's something that would be so fun about just winning a lot of regular season games. But I don't know. I hate comping guys to Hall of Famers. I really won't do it seriously. While Caleb's game reminds me a lot of Rodgers stylistically, I also tend to that's the thing, wideout, right? Rodgers ain't no B. You know what I mean? Like Rodgers was not going to throw it to somebody who wasn't open. He wasn't going to fit it into tight window situations when he just didn't think he had to. Aaron Rodgers thought he could stand in the pocket forever because he would move around enough to make that work, right? And oh my God, 35 touchdowns? Holy smokes. Like if you got 3,800 yards and you got 24 touchdowns, that's insane. You know this already, Donald, because you listened to too much of my stuff. 11 passing touchdowns. That's all we're looking for. Like, I'm not saying that that's the bar. We're not going to call 12 passing touchdowns it. But gosh, if he sets Kramer's record, if that's the direction they go and he sets Kramer's record and also sets the Bears passing touchdown record, like, holy smokes, that would be unbelievable. Like, yeah, Derek. Yes, Derek. Derek is absolutely right. Like, oh my gosh, Derek nailed it. If Caleb threw for 35 touchdowns, Donald, if Caleb threw for 35 touchdowns, he's gonna be on the cover at Madden 25. Like, if Caleb threw for 35 touchdowns, he's gonna be on every billboard. He's gonna replace Patrick, maybe not replace, but he's gonna get a deal and he's gonna be in all those State Farm commercials. Like, if he did that, he's going to be on every piece of media. Like, yeah, right, Akusai? He's going to be, I own it, as a matter of fact. Caleb, Caleb would end up like guest starring in an episode of SVU. Like Caleb would end up, I don't know. The sky would nearly be the limit. Like it would be the talk of everything, for crying out loud. Erger, here's the irony, right? So Caleb Williams in this theoretical scenario. All right, so like so Caleb Williams throws for 3,800 yards, 35 touchdowns, TDs, and let's say he throws for 8 picks just to really seal it. He's going to also rush for, I'm going to say, 300 yards. It felt like it could have been more, but he's going to rush for 300 yards. He's going to fumble 10 times, and he's going to add, let's go with 5 touchdowns in this psycho scenario, right? Because what I think would happen in this psycho Bears world that I think is funny is that you just know Justin Fields would end up combining. So Justin Fields, and this is if he stayed healthy, which kind of is an if. But thank you so much, your imagination. Excited to see you subscribe. Justin Fields would end up rushing for 10 fumbles lost per bot. Justin Fields would throw for, let's say, 3,000 yards. He would probably score, in this case, 18 touchdowns. I think he'd throw for 11 interceptions. And then he'd rush for 1,100 yards. He'd fumble probably, let's go with, all right, I'm going to make this 20. Screw it. He fumbles a lot. Loses 12 of them. He would fumble 9 times. And then he would score, let's say, 12 TDs. No, that's too many. 8 TDs. And there would be Bears fans in this world that would look at the fact that the yardage was the same. They would ignore the touchdowns. And they would say, why did we trade him? You had him right here. Don't you know that would happen? That's all I'm saying. Is like the main thing that I just think is goofy about what it is to be a Bears fan right now is that if Fields does anything comparable to rookie Caleb Williams, there are going to be a lot of people that are going to wonder why you bothered making the trade at all. But I think that'll be silly. But so let me see. Schefter made a report and Better zated up. Like I tend to think so, Akusai. Like it's worth remembering that let me see. JF would have more like 2,700 yards passing. Yeah, he might. That only happens if Fields wins more games. That's fair, Preston. But I tend to think, for what it's worth, that the Fields to Pittsburgh stuff is just us as football fans being bored. You got to remember, it feels very us, right? But it feels very Bears focused, but that's because it is. Like, nationally speaking right now, all eyes are on the number 1 overall pick. It doesn't help anything, does it? That Justin Fields, can we say this, is one of the most popular players in the NFL, right? Like, Justin Fields reminds me a lot of the way people talked about Michael Vick, right? And I don't know anything about Michael Vick. He really was truly just before my time. Really just before my time. But looking back at Michael Vick's stats, it was always wild to me the way people talk about him, because Michael Vick played 4 years in Atlanta, never really won, and that, like, ran a lot, didn't throw for a ton, went to the playoffs, lost. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to take away from Vick, but the way people talk about Vick, he was a Hall of Famer, and he was one of the most exciting players in the league at the time, and he is revered to this day as exceptional and electric. And that reminds me a lot of Fields, in the, like, at least right now, where a lot of people love what Justin is. Like, and that's the thing. Like, it's the visor, it's the cool factor, it's how easy he is to cheer for, it's the running, it's the wow plays. Like, I can't help but see a lot of similarities between Vic and Fields right now. That's at least my 2 cents. But that would be really interesting, Donald. Really would be. And ran a 4.3, man. Uh, and so I tend to think that because of this, you've got this debate between your common number one overall pick in Caleb Williams. He is, right? It's less common, I think, to have a Bryce Young type pick, even a CG Stroud type pick. Stroud is much more normal, right? But so within that, it's like you've got a common number one overall pick, and you've got a passer in Justin Fields that is outrageously popular. Outrageously popular, especially given what he's actually delivered to the city of Chicago. The way that, like, that's the thing. Vic talent with JF1 leadership, 100%. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm trying to tank on Justin Fields or kill him in this capacity. It's more to say that I do think Fields' reputation, especially for people outside Chicago, like, I tend to think that Fields' reputation is just a little outsized from what the player is. Like, Fields is that guy that I swear every defense goes, oh man, I can't believe we have to face down Justin Fields. And then they beat him and they go, whew, I'm glad we beat Justin Fields. But they did beat him in most of these cases. Like, I don't know. We'll see. That's the thing. Then Eagles Vic happened. And who knows? Maybe Eagles Fields will happen or something like that. Totally possible. Yeah. Yeah, Vic to Deshaun was unbelievable. Unbelievable. And that Vic I remember. Like, post-jail Vic, for better and for worse. I did watch him, and he was sweet. But, Bradley, the hands thing is actually, it has bothered me before, but we don't need to go there, right? Let me see here. We've barely watched any Dallas Turner. I hope we're cool. Hope everybody's having a fun stream anyways. Let me see. Does Mahomes have small hands? Burrow might. Let's go. Patrick Mahomes mock draftable. He does. Huh. 9.25. And then who does he comp well to? Mitchell Trubisky. Joe Burr. And his hand size is teeny weeny. Goodness. 9-inch hands. There you go. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? I have no idea what Caleb Williams' hand size is, but I'll tell you what, Ravi, like, this is not to make it or to make one thing better than the other. But Caleb, so this is just what I see at least, right? Like, Caleb will at some points take the ball and he will hold it all the way out here. And then he will just flip his hand over and spin it out towards somebody. Like, you've seen it before. It's those weird arm angle throws. But when he just pulls the ball out, flips it over, and spins it. And I would be really surprised if he doesn't at least have medium-sized hands, because that is insane that he's able to grip the ball that well and still get that kind of velo on it without being able to control it, right? Like that. Let me see. 4 piece heavy. It would be hilarious, but they'd call it that dog, right? Derek Ryan Poles uses mock draftable, 100%. It's so funny because Dallas Turner is one of those players that you can just see. He's just big. A really big person. Run play. We don't get it. Let's see. A favorite player. Quinyon Mitchell's such a stud, David. Such a stud. Such a beast. The Bears don't need him. But he's awesome. He's so good. See, these are plays where I would love to see a little bit more out of Turner. I'm sure he's holding the edge or playing contain. I don't know. I haven't looked that hard at it. He knows a blitz is coming, but we just end up walked down the edge, and then that is just sort of that. And that's the thing, Derek. Coaches think that all the time. All right, I'm gonna find my one Anaya Smith play, and then we're gonna say that is that, and we're gonna move on to somebody else because I want to watch the LSU receivers. We're gonna rip through as much tape as I can before about 11:30. I think it's been a great discussion. I'm glad we got to have it, but I can feel myself fading. For once, I am. Let me see. I don't know if he goes CB1 just because of Toledo, but if he pops at the combine, David, he might. He had an outstanding Senior Bowl. Outstanding Senior Bowl. Leonidas, man, I know you're better than this. Let me challenge you, man. Like, you don't have to be so aggressive on the internet. If anything, Leonidas, I think it can actually be very disarming and charming for you to not be as aggressive, even as you make your point. Donald, if any, like, I know Jordan, but in particular, Donald generally, I don't want to say he agrees with you, but like, Donald's had to get off the Fields train more than once. Like, it's an emotional thing, man. Like, if you can't see that it is emotional, like, that's the thing, though, Leonidas, right? Because I get that you're sick and tired of it. I do. But you have to remember that there are hearts involved. Like, I know that that might sound corny to you, but it's real. People put a lot of their heart and soul into football fandom of all kinds. To some people, it's their college team. To others, it's their pro team. For me, it's my pro team, for better and for worse. For worse, a lot. And that feeling when Cutler was not the guy, I still remember. That feeling of watching the 2019 Packers game, week 1, I still remember. And it's the only reason, because I remember those feelings, is the only reason that I wasn't absolutely sick to my stomach when I watched Tampa this year. Because Tampa this year, to me, if week 1 wasn't bad enough, week 2 was. And everybody, what I'm trying to say, Leonidas, because here's the core. A lot of people know. A lot of people actually get more than you think. It's just not fun. It's not fun to say our guy sucks. That's Leonidas. Imagine you were a Dolphins fan. What would you be commenting? I'm serious. Would you be part of 2 and on, or would you be like, we're done, we're screwed, it's over, like, peace? Mike McDaniel sucks. Mike McDaniel built up a fraud. Like, it's hard. There's like 5 teams that are happy with their quarterbacks, and like, they're not even that. I mean, it's so hard. It's so hard. Like, I mean, football is tough because it looks like, I mean, you also have to remember, guys, that this Super Bowl is hilarious because this Super Bowl had Patrick Mahomes win it, which obviously makes everybody feel inadequate, right? But beyond that, the real stars of the Super Bowl are the only people that don't show up on the screen. Like, I think it's so funny. We talk about this on the channel all the time. Did you guys catch it? Because I've been saying it on the podcast, right? The Chiefs won because their DBs whooped ass. They whooped ass the entire game. It was awesome. It was awesome watching the Chiefs play defense. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Watching the Chiefs play defense was a true joy. And as a Bears fan, when I see good defense, gosh, it makes me smile. And it is hilarious, isn't it, that Patrick Mahomes got all the credit for the Chiefs DBs bodying the San Fran wide receivers. Like, you guys are talking about McDuffie. McDuffie's sick. Snead put Ayuk in a blender. Like, I mean, those guys had nothing. They had nothing. Like, it was awesome watching that. But it was so funny, right? Because within that, Jordan, I know you saw this. Okay, suddenly it's Brock Purdy's fault. I'm not trying to cape for Purdy too hard, but that's the game we're going to point to. Like, we're going to point to that one, which is so funny, right? Like, I tend to think the more football I watch, the more people just go nuts, Leonidas. And and that's okay, because at the end of the day, being a fan is kind of not all that easy, right? Being a fan means that you have to pick the guys you're going to make excuses for, and you're going to pick the guys you don't. Shane, by the way, thank you for commenting. I haven't seen you comment a whole lot. I'm glad you got involved. Like, love it. All this to say, Leonidas, that I could spin you some stupid yarn about how you catch more flies with honey than vinegar, but the truth is that if you remember that behind that other person's avatar, there is somebody who's just kind of brokenhearted about the whole situation. It makes everything make a lot more sense, in my opinion. Like, why do people want to build around Fields? Well, two reasons, right? One of them is because they love the person, and I don't think Fields, the person, has done anything wrong. Or number two, they have lost faith in the quarterback position altogether, which is about as Bears fan as you could be. And that person believes that if you just got any quarterback nearly, and that in that eyes, they say Fields could be that quarterback. The way I like to put it is I like to assume that the Bears were going to sign Baker Mayfield, or assume that the Bears were going to sign Gardner Minshew. If you traded Fields and then you traded down like crazy, what kind of team could you build around them? Maybe a badass team, right? But I don't know. There are a lot of fans that they just don't believe that the Bears would ever get a Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen level quarterback. And John De La Talia, you mentioned this earlier. Are Bills fans even happy with Josh Allen? If they're not, who can be? Right? Like, it's so funny the way that it's so funny the way we talk about quarterbacks. Because if you didn't win the Super Bowl, your quarterback sucks. Lamar sucks. He lost the only game that mattered. CJ Stroud, he's good, but just wait until he does not improve on his next season. Like, just wait until he's exactly who he was this year, next year. Well, now he just didn't improve, right? Like, then let's go through some more. Stafford's cool. We like Stafford because for some reason, when you get old enough, we just like that you do anything at all, right? Herbert sucks because he can't drag his team to the playoffs. Derek Carr sucks. And I mean, Derek does kind of suck, which is so funny, but not at all, right? Like, that's a starting level NFL quarterback. I mean, it's so funny talking through all this. Like, the only quarterback that people agree is good is Patrick Mahomes. And 2 years later, not 2 years later, 2 years ago, people wanted Justin Herbert over Patrick Mahomes for no reason at all. That was the weird one to me. That one was funny to me. Was 2 years ago on Twitter, people would go, which quarterback do you want? And the supposed right answer was Justin Herbert. And I don't hate on Herbert. It was more just wild to me that at the time we were taking a 26-year-old, two-time MVP and a Super Bowl winner, and people were like, nah, give me the other one. I remember being like, what? Aaron Rodgers, Alessandro. People think Rodgers sucks. People think Rodgers sucked in Green Bay. And I'm like, what? I mean, you mentioned Geno, right? He's all like, that's the thing. Geno is slightly above average alpha. You turn on the tape, he's slinging the pill because it is just not easy to be even average it's not easy to be average at all in the NFL. Trevor Lawrence has thrown for 4,000 yards twice. That obviously would have broken Eric Kramer's record. Now he's considered a disappointment. Being a quarterback in the NFL is just brutal. Just brutal. Like, it's so tough. And Leonidas, if you're still there, because I haven't seen you comment since then, it's all to say, all of this is to say that it's really easy to feel like your guy sucks. It's really easy to feel like it's obvious. It is hard for everybody. And every fan base is kind of simultaneously going through it. Hey, let me throw another one at you guys. If you're a Vikings fan, What do you even want to do? What choice do you have? Stick with Cousins? Is Cousins it? Is Cousins the answer? Do you just straight up tank in the third year of your of like your new coach's tenure? Do you trade up for Jaden Daniels? Like, what do you do if you're the Vikings? I You don't really have a lot of great options. I mean, Bears tax. I think they have to keep Kirk. I think they do. It just sucks for them because I can't help but look at a guy like Kirk, or I can't help but look at a guy like Kirk Cousins and think that obviously you're talking about a sinking ship. Like, as far as what you let me see, what are the odds that Andrew Up asks, what are the odds that Williams is actually on Mahomes' level? Pretty slim. Yeah, 100%, Andrew. They are very slim. Very slim, right? Just so that we're on the same page. I think the actual expectation should be this is a last name. So, well, like Baker Murray, which I'm cheating. I picked the two Lincoln Riley quarterbacks, right? But I think that you should see sort of a fusion of Baker and Murray, and then he gets better from there. That would be the expectation that I would give you, not just as a rookie, but in general. Like, wild Dak is what Jordan was rolling with earlier, but I look at Caleb Williams and I think to myself, to be honest with you, Andrew, I would just look and say, I think he has the makeup to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, even if it's on the bottom one. And like Miles, you mentioned that Caleb has crazier throws than Mahomes did. Totally. There's just one of that guy, right? So the moment we expect it, 100% Jordan. It's more to say that when we talk about Caleb Williams, so that we're all on the same page. Robert hopes he can be a Hall of Famer. Don't we all? Robert expects that he would be Murray like, and maybe a little bit of Baker while we're at it, because Baker hit the ground running pretty early. And like Baker actually had, I think, 100 QBR or something, like a 92 QBR in his, and by that, I guess I mean passer rating, so that may not matter. But like Baker threw for near 4,000 yards as rookie when he first landed in Cleveland, and things decayed from there. Kyler Murray, in his third and fourth year, had an MVP case before injuries derailed things. You look at both of these quarterbacks, they both did different things well. Like, one hit the ground sooner and then got hurt. Now he threw for 4,000 yards with Tampa Bay. And then Murray is kind of his own animal. And I look at Caleb Williams and I tend to think off of just talent and what I imagine Shane Waldron will do with him and the team that the Bears can put around the guy. I fully expect Caleb to be in that mold. So when we are talking about, like, that's the thing, Phantom, I'm with you. I think Kyler Murray's awesome. But the reason I mentioned this, Andrew, because you brought this up and I really appreciate you, is that when we're talking about Caleb versus Fields, the whole reason that Caleb is helpful in this case is because I think you're getting top 12, top 10 quarterback play with a hope that it gets even better than that. But that's pretty good. Like, if you get a guy in that club in the top half that's throwing for 35, 37, 3,900 yards, like the average attempts for a quarterback who's thrown for 4,000, I actually don't know, Sean. I'd look it up, but I guess we got to do the LSU receivers here at some point. Let's see. Yeah, Andrew, that's kind of how I feel. And Alpha, I agree with you. I mean, watching, let me see, Jordan, I've watched a little. Let me see, 430 here. So what does that mean? 430 attempts. Ooh. Let me see. 430 divided by 17 is an average of, is it seriously only 25 attempts a game? But let me see. I think people like to compare their childhood quarterbacks they watch, Rivers, Manning, Ben, Breeze, Rodgers, Brady, etc., to now, and think it's bad compared to then. Oh man, no, they were better. Like Bradley, I think if anything, quarterbacking has gotten quite worse. Hal Platinum is a 13 Bears jersey going. Man, Miles, I don't know. I don't even know if Caleb wants to wear 13. I hope he does. I think 13 is the only number that could succeed in Chicago, which is a joke, but not. Like, I personally think that there's no other number that I would want him to wear. Like, curse breaker. I love it. I eat that up. Like number one is cool, but I almost love this idea of just talking it out with you guys. I love this idea, the story writer within me. I got into film analysis because I wanted to answer my questions, and I brought people along with me in the journey. At the end of the day, I am a story writer, and I always think in terms of the narrative. If you guys can't tell, because storytelling is really where I go nuts. And the idea that the Bears tried every number, nearly every number in history. And there is one Bears quarterback that wore 13 temporarily. I'm not counting him. But so it's as if the Bears tried out every single number for quarterback, with the last one before the one that worked being the number one. And then Caleb came, and he wore the number you can't wear. He wore 13, right? And with that, the curse was broken. Like, I would eat that up. If that's actually how this thing plays out, that's going to be like, that's going to be the stuff you write in a book. Like, it's the stuff you put in the 30 for 30. It's going to be the whole, like, it's the whole, you just don't, you just don't wear that number. You just don't wear that number. Like, that kind of thing. He did do a Dr. Pepper commercial about it. And Butthead, would you believe me? So, not to sound like a know-it-all, would you believe me if I could tell you the answer? So, Alpha, I think it's 100% like that he'd become a villain. It's part of why I keep bringing him back to Rodgers, right? I think that it's so funny that everybody really likes to comp Mahomes to I think it's funny that everybody likes to comp Mahomes to Caleb, if only because Mahomes and Caleb are totally different people. Like Caleb reminds me of Rodgers in the same way that he's dislikable, that he's painfully his own person, that he's arrogant, and that his release and his football ability make him hard to question, but easy to root against if you don't like him, right? And so a lot of the game comparison of Caleb and Rodgers, I think, is pretty similar too. But I also sit here and wonder, kind of like the boy goes with, like, all right, that's the thing, Derek. I don't want to pretend that Mahomes is more than the nice guy. Mahomes gets to be the nice guy because he wins, right? Like, Mahomes just keeps coming out on the right side of things. Easy to look cool and nice and humble when you're always winning, right? But like, I agree with you, Calix. I think that Caleb does need time. I think that one thing that may help Calix, in my opinion, is that, let me see, putting my thoughts together. I think one thing that'll help Caleb Calix is that if the Bears do decide that they're going to take Williams, they can tell him early, and he can start working on the playbook in advance so he can get a head start on other rookies, which I do think will be nice. But so anyways, Bud had asked this earlier. I do want to go through this because I think that this is really intriguing. Okay. Give me just a minute. Jordan Jimenez, do I remember this? I'm the one who's been saying that this, like, over the last couple weeks, I think. But anyways, so Bud had asked, what happened to quarterbacking? What happened to it? The answer, if you can believe it, comes down to high school football, college football, and the NFL's practice rules, all happening at the same time. So around first, I'd have to go back and look at when it was, but when Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and the Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers and all the other quarterbacks that you know and love. No, it's not refs. Like, when all of them entered the league, they did so at a time when there was literally no limit on how much you could practice. And it had nothing to do with player safety. That didn't matter. You could just practice all the time, all day, et cetera, et cetera. And so a lot of these other guys, a lot of the guys that we know and love perfected their game with their quarterbacks coaches as rookies, drilling and 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 drilling with their quarterbacks coach, which is, I don't want to say illegal. It's not a law thing, but it is now against code in the NFL to do that, right? And you mentioned that they were also taught under center, because that's the other thing, Calix. That was back in the day when collegiate teams were still running pro-style offenses. Not all of them, but many were, right? And so you could get a quarterback out of Penn State. You could get a quarterback out of whatever some of these other colleges were. That you mentioned divas. It's not as simple as divas, butthead. It's that then the spread basically got really popular in high school because teams were figuring out more and more ways, and by teams I mean coaches, to put your most athletic kid at the quarterback spot and live and die with what they could do. And you got more quarterback run game. You got more like veer passing. You got more one and done. You got a lot more of the stuff that we see today, but it was in its infancy, right? And so simultaneously, what's happening at the same time, right, is practices as that practice limitations started to get imposed. You got quarterbacks that were being coached less, while high school quarterbacks were being taught less pro-related things. Because at the NFL or at the college level, you might go through a 3 progression read, and then at the pro level, you might add a 4th progression onto it, or you just have to go through it faster. It's the same difference, right? But the air raid is a completely different offensive scheme. It has nearly nothing to do with how you process the game at the NFL level. Obviously, you're reading the defense. Obviously, you're making a check from there, but it's vastly more creative. The air raid is jazz. If the offense, I know I said this about Shane Waldron, but like the air raid is what is the first solution you can think of, and then outside of that, just go make a play for us, right? And that's what you see most of what Lincoln Riley's quarterbacks have done in the past do. And so you end up with all these different, butthead, what this combines to is that you have quarterbacks in college, like Jaden Daniels, just not to hate Jaden Daniels, but like Jaden Daniels, right? You have quarterbacks like Jaden Daniels that are not trying to learn NFL things. They've been trying to win in college, right? And in college, if you don't like what you see, run. You're one of the fastest people on the field. You can go win a Heisman running. And he did, right? And then you get to the pro level, and you just can't do that. The windows are drastically tighter. And if you don't understand throwing windows at this point in your career, you're just not going to pick them up, because you might get to the point where you could be a collegiate window passer, but you can't just play at the pro level passing into throwing windows that guys like Mac Jones and Nick Foles and less athletic players have had to pass into, because it was the only way to survive. That's the other piece to quarterbacking that I haven't talked about. And I've brought it up on this channel a lot, right? But so in my opinion, one of the other things that I think is harder on more athletic quarterbacks is that more athletic quarterbacks have to go through exponentially more options than a slower quarterback, right? Like, think about the difference in choices that a guy like Nick Foles had on any given snap versus what Justin Fields has. Justin can hold on to the football. He's got an arm for days. And if not, he can run the ball. He can veer left. He can veer right. He can break a tackle. He can step up in the pocket if he wants to. He can do all kinds of things. He doesn't need that first read. He doesn't need it, right? It would be great if it's open, but it doesn't need it. With Nick Foles, man, you can't move. Mac Jones, same way. You can't move. Tom Brady, you can't move. You got a hell of an arm, but you can't really move. So you have to throw the ball. You have to step up in the pocket. You have to change rush lane angles. You have to fit that thing in a tight window. You have to, or you're going to die. And it's part of, David, why, in my opinion, you get a lot of these quarterbacks that when they are that the guys with lower mobility toolkits are the ones that, in my opinion, are a little more natural when it comes to more complex passing mechanics. And that can't be surprising. It's their only choice. The only way they got to the only way that they got to where they were as an NFL passer was by proving that they could handle that kind of thing. That's what kept them, upright. And that's what won them games. And so then you get a guy like Mahomes, who is both. He is athletic enough to be this playmaker, but he really does do a lot of his work on time. And suddenly you have the best passer in the game right now. But it's really hard to go from one to the other. Like, if you don't have the mobility toolkit, you can't do it. Or if you can't be that mobile, you're not going to be. You're not going to learn it, right? But a lot of coaches you're seeing right now are trying to take the athletic kid and teach them all the complex passing, and that is really hard. It's really hard. And it's just not something that comes naturally, and it's not something everybody can do. The way that I would think about it is, if you and I sat down with Mac Jones, and Mac Jones might not be in the league in 3 years. So let's keep in mind that we're talking about a quarterback that might not be good enough to be in the NFL anymore. Brock Purdy, similar way. I expect that he would do this too. But Mac, I want to stick with for a moment. And we showed him a defense. We gave him the whole pre-snap tape. He gets 15 seconds of pre-snap look, right? And then we gave him the first half second after the snap. I bet he could tell us what defense they were in, for the most part, right? Like, if we gave Mac a play, and I might have to give him a full second, just to be clear, but you get the point, right? That type of quarterback has to process information at such an insane rate that I don't think it's as easy as it sounds to take guys that have been playing off of feel, have been playing off of athleticism, have been playing off of what they can do differently than other people, and teach them to take in the whole field, find creases in the defense, and throw into them. Like, for instance, Donald. I don't think Justin Fields knows how to throw to a spot, right? And I don't mean that in a horrible way. I mean that as in, I think Fields throws to a receiver. I think Fields throws to a person who's running a route and is open or not, right? But a lot of these quarterbacks that understand throwing windows know that they just have to throw to the spot. Like, oh, there's a defender there. There's a defender there. I have to throw through them. And my receiver's going to be there, or I'm going to throw an interception. But that's life, right? And I don't know if he knows how to do that, because at least I haven't seen it yet. And that's the thing, Jordan. Exactly. And that's where Kyle Shanahan loves his quarterbacks that are yes or no, sir, about where you're throwing. Like, oh, Kyle told me to throw there. Yes. Like, I will do it. And then he does. And so my hope would be that Caleb can take this, because I have seen Caleb do it. He just doesn't think he has to, right? Like, when I look at Caleb, just so we're all on the same page, I have seen him throw between linebackers. I have seen him see a defender move, look back the other way, and throw behind that defender who just moved. A lot of these more complex passing things that we're talking about, I have seen Caleb try them. I also think that Caleb is relatively risk averse. Caleb does not want to throw interceptions. Duh, who does? But he tends to turn down a tight window shot, thinking he'll get a better one, right? Like, when I look at Caleb's tape, I see that same Rodgers-like greediness where he wants to sit in the pocket because he thinks he'll be able to stay there forever. And then he thinks something will open up downfield. So if it isn't open, well, something else is going to be. Like, that's at least my take. Calix Rose, you disagree? Like, I've seen him do it. It's like 3 to 4 times a game. It's not that often. But in plenty of cases, he's just chucking the ball down the sidelines. Or he'll turn down something underneath, and then he'll end up hitting something like behind But yeah, Bradley, he could throw over the middle of the field. Did a lot more of it in 2022. But let's see. Will the Bears coaches preach the 200 rule to Caleb? I don't know, John. I really don't. I think that's going to be a matter of what Shane Waldron does and doesn't tell his guy. Like, oh, gotcha. No worries, Calix. You were a USC person. So I was like, I was completely there if you wanted to be like, that's not really what I see. Because you've probably watched, frankly, more games than I have. But let's see. Who do I think Getsy loves more, Knicks or Penix? Probably Knicks, if I had to guess. Yeah, probably Knicks. I think the NFL is going to like Knicks a lot more than they're like going to like Penix. But that's largely because of Penix's injury issues. Plus, let me see. Like, 200 rule is something a defensive coach would do, which is why he did. Let me see if I can find this thing. There it is. This play's fun. So one thing that I also like about Ainias Smith is his footwork. His foot frequency in particular is really, really sweet. Like he can take a whole lot of steps very quickly when he wants to. And here he just pops a guy's ankles and gets wide open for what should have been a touchdown if the quarterback had put the ball a little further out there. But look at the separation on this DV. Ooh, isn't that nice? Like, and all this route sim stuff. Like we get head fake out, head fake in, rip back out, separation. Oh. And we're mad about it too, which I like that. But Smith is just a passionate dude that I can get with. And I'm a fan of it. How you doing, Donnie? What's going on? 120 viewers at 11 p.m. Guys are bananas. Let me see. I can't remember if Ainias makes another play here later in the drive, but I'm just skimming through it to see if he does. Alex, we're stoked. We're stoked. We're stoked, baby. We're stoked. No, he didn't. All right, so let's go to the LSU receivers. That sounds fun. Also against Bama. Why didn't I think to do this first? Okay, so let me see here. I would scout Jaden Daniels, but can I be honest, Jordan? I just don't really care that much. But we can. I mean, it'll come up. Let me see. There it is. Brian Thomas, and he's number 11. So, let's see. I got you, Jordan. I haven't scouted him too crazily. I haven't dug in too much. All right, so then I got to get, I think that's Neighbors in the slot. It is. Question is always, where's Andrews? There he is. Bang. Haplo, I appreciate you. I don't know why I keep wanting to call him Brian Andrews. It's just wrong. We're watching both. So here we're watching Neighbors. We're also watching Brian Thomas. Because I'm interested in both of them. That's for sure. Boy, fast. I don't know, Phantom. I always let that be. Especially because, okay, so Phantom, my favorite story from being at the Combine. Not that you couldn't see this on TV. So Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed is one of my favorite receivers. Ends up in Green Bay. I hated it, right? But I thought Jaden Reed would run a 4.5. He ends up showing up at the Combine. He runs a 4.47, I think, in his first run, right? First heat. Boom. 4.47, right? So he's officially a 4.4 guy. Second run. Ran like a 4.59. Something drastically worse, right? That was way more in line with what I actually thought Jaden Reed's 40 time would be. But of course, you take the higher time, Why wouldn't you? And what I thought was hilarious as I watched that was I realized that some of these things like 40, et cetera, like you can guess as to what you think their 40 would be. They get 2 attempts and it may work out the way you think it will. It may not, but you might be relatively in line. I don't know. I'm sure you get it. Let's see here. Is that neighbors in the slot again? I imagine. I think they're both on the same side. Yeah, they are. Sweet. Neighbors always looks bigger when I actually watch him than what I thought he looked like. There's neighbors right there. Focus. Neighbors is 8. Thomas is 11. I appreciate the stem. I love a good stem out of a solid wide receiver. Like, even frame by frame, it's just a basic vertical stem, and then bang. 3 steps and he's stopped. Remen, I would simplify it as to just say that when I watch Jaden Daniels, I see a. So, Remen, I could point out a bunch of statistical trends about Jaden Daniels that would bother me, right? Jaden Daniels, for instance, started 4 years in college and was not considered draftable above, say, a 4th round. Then he has an amazing season, and now he's going to be top 5. So that would be a red flag. I could talk about how Jaden Daniels seems relatively small of frame, which would bother me, right? But I'm really big on quarterback weight more so than quarterback height. But also, like then I could talk about the fact that he's a little older than than most quarterbacks that come out and have a lot of success, which is its own question mark. But a lot of this really comes down to, I think he's a collegiate passer. I mean, he doesn't it doesn't matter. Like he's playing with 2 first-round receivers, and he doesn't have to look beyond read number 1 because why would he bother? Why would he bother? Right? He is outstanding, or not outstanding, but he's very good at throwing the football, which you would hope he is, right? And when he delivers to these guys make him look really good. But to me, a quarterback isn't made by what he does throwing to his first read. Which, hey, if he's making a check at the line to get to that, then that's a whole separate thing. And then this stuff also bothers me. I hold this against quarterbacks more than I should, so I'm gonna let you know right now. I have the same problem with Drake Maye. Like when quarterbacks are driven by what they do on the sidelines, like I don't love that because to me that is the coach reading the Alabama defense for him and making a check on his behalf. So now I'm not sure the quarterback can do it if it actually came down. If push came to shove, can they do it? And I don't know, right? Whereas with Caleb made the wrong read a lot, but at least with the air raid, you knew he was the one making the check, which at least helps. And that's the thing, Jacob. A lot of people did say the same thing about CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud's tape looks not near as good as it does in the NFL in every game except Georgia. So there's only so much we know, and there's always going to be guys that end up always going to be guys that do better in the NFL than pundits or scouts or people like me think they will. I don't ever want to pretend that I have a crystal ball. I can just tell you what I'm seeing, right? How far does LSU go with Caleb? Alex, I could not tell you. I think that Caleb needs the NFL badly. To be honest with you, Alex, I think that Caleb right now is, I think that his usage rate like at USC, Alex, if you're still in here, I'm curious as to what you think about this. I think that the offense centered too much around Caleb Williams. Like one thing that bothers me watching USC is that there's no real part in the offense that the USC quarterback does not control, which I completely get. But it felt to me as if when things would start to spiral, then Caleb had to be drastically more poised because there wasn't really a turnaround and hand it off or an easy play within the USC offense that didn't involve the quarterback doing something, right? And that kind of created a rains it pours attitude instead of push pull. But that's at least what I thought. Yeah, exactly, Phantom. And Haplo, I'll have to check it out. There's Brian Thomas. Looks like there's Malik Neighbors. Oh, well, that's easy, isn't it? So he's just going to blow by him then. Goodness. Goodness. Make it any easier, Malik. Why don't you? Backing up a little bit. Look at this release by Brian Thomas. I really like the speed and quickness you see there. I'm not expecting Brian Thomas to be especially technical, but even just the speed and the stem, like you can tell this guy's fast. And he's pretty big too. Kind of does, doesn't it, Donald? I mean, Malik just dusts him. Man, what a bummer. We got another great matchup on Neighbors. Oh my gosh. All right, so hang on. No, he's gone. This guy's he's never looking. Like, and I understand at least part of that is because he sees that, but this is quarters, or at least it's quarters like maybe it's 4 lock or something, like cover 4, like locked on this side. But oh my gosh, that post is about to bust wide open. Wide open. Like, Neighbors' speed is hilarious just watching this game. He'll take the hitch. So be it. I don't think it's a safety, Shane. I think it's a corner, probably playing like cover 4, but I can't remember the play. That's pretty cool, Mario. That's got to be pretty cool for Kool-Aid. What do we not like here? Or is it a quarterback draw? Oh, it's probably a draw. Man, he can scoot. You got to hand it to Daniels. The guy is fast as hell. Like, that burst up the field reminds me of somebody, doesn't it? I know, Shane. And I'm sorry I didn't get you a better answer. I'm trying to basically extend the stream until 11:30 and see if we can't bust through this game. And then we'll save the rest for another time. So Mario, I really mean what I'm about to say into the camera. And that's that I don't believe the NFL is as stupid as we make them sound sometimes. Right around now is around the time that we start to make the NFL sound like they're complete dinguses most of the time. If Neighbors is this good, because if you can't tell, I haven't watched that much of Neighbors, he will go higher than 9. He should. And it'll be Odunze that falls. Like, it's not that hard. Tyler Smith ended up drafted a first rounder because he's an insane athlete. This was years ago. Christian Watson was a 5th rounder until LOL. No, he isn't. Right? We do this every year where we go, where we say Neighbors, DJ Moore, and Caleb could be amazing. And they could be. But if Neighbors is that dog, he's going to go at like 5. And he still might. Was that Thomas down the sideline? Let me see. This is Thomas, right? Not him. 2 puts a sweet little release on him. Not like Thomas is bad either. Holy smokes. The boy, nothing wrong with having sweet receivers. Or nothing wrong with having 2 carbon copy receivers when one of them's a 1,300-yard guy. It would be, John. Lenitis, unfortunate. So first of all the prospects in the first round, which one do I think will be most likely to fall to 9? So it's really easy to project players that will fall to 9 because I just think who's not in the top 8. I think Adunze. So I think Adunze is going to have a pretty meh combine. If I had to guess, I think he's going to look good, but I think Neighbors is going to look different, right? And so I tend to think that Adunze has a very good shot at falling to 9. I really do. Not because I love Adunze. I'm actually trying to tell you that from what I understand, I like Neighbors better, right? Or at least I think the NFL is going to like Neighbors better. He's got enough size at 6'0". He's got enough weight at like 200 pounds. He's somebody that everybody thinks has been amazing since the day he stepped on a college field. He's got everything you're looking for. He really does. I think that Bowers is easily going to get to 9. I think Bowers could fall a little bit further than 9 too. But it's like, at least when I look at things, I think Adunze is a much better shot at being there at 9. And I think the hope would be that Adunze could then step up. But like you're saying, flex digs. So let's do this really fast. 11:45. Fine. We'll go all teams because I'm going to do it, right? Let's say that the Bears take Caleb Williams. Sue me. Next, I think Drake May goes off the board. At this point, it's hard for me to tell what would happen, but I think that the Patriots are probably going to trade out and they're going to let somebody else take Jaden Daniels. Who's going to be the most aggressive? Let me just take a shot in the dark. And I think that the Raiders are going to do it. Let's see. I don't want to hear that. I'm going to force it. And let's say they do something like that. Can I give up a 2025? Like a 2025? They give up a lot, right? I'm doing this without looking at any of you, just so we're on the same page. So I am truly going to do this as best I can. And then they're going to take Jaden Daniels. And then I think at number 4, Arizona tries to trade out. They can't. They end up taking Marv. I think at 5, people end up shocked when like Joe Alt goes off the board. When we're talking about Harbaugh, let me see. Do they even need a tackle? I don't know if they need a tackle. Just thinking out loud. There's a chance that I could see Harbaugh wanting Brock Bowers. Again, I'm not going to cheat. I'm not going to look at any of you guys. You guys probably have better ideas than I do, to be completely honest with you. But I think that they would take a look at this and that they would say, all right, what do we need? And I think they could easily take Neighbors. I think they could very easily take Neighbors. Very easily. But it wouldn't surprise me if they want to bully people. And so somebody like JC Latham, they could play a little bit of guard. Might make sense here, but 5's awfully high. So maybe they take a guy like Bowers. In this case, I'm going to give him Neighbors because I think that makes a lot of sense. So then you get to the Giants. The Giants need all kinds of things, right? But if they truly wanted to move on or truly were ready to move on, maybe they take a Joe Alt type. I think Alt going at least somewhere around here makes an awful lot of sense. And so we're going to give it to them. And then moving down a little bit, I think this is where you could get your first corner. I don't think it's going to be Cooper DeJean, though I guess I don't know. So I can't say that with absolute certainty. But the Titans could easily take a corner if they liked one. And if they didn't like one, I think that I don't know that they would take a Dunze, but it might actually make a lot of sense here. Just because not only do they like the needs thing, in this case, they do need wide receiver, but you're trying to see if you can't get more out of Levis and you're disappointed with the receivers that you have. So somebody like Rome would totally fit. In this case, I'm going to give it to him. Just because I'm trying to make this as realistic as possible, right? I'll come up with better stuff as I know these players better. To be honest with you guys, I really don't. Life's gotten in the way. I think that the Falcons would easily consider taking Dallas Turner. They think they've got the goods. They may sign a guy like Kirk Cousins in the offseason, or at least try to, so that they can rock and roll with the best edge defender on the board. And then the Bears are left with this. Do you think it's unrealistic? I am now looking at the chat again. Who needs tackle? Let me see. You said McCarthy went to the Falcons. I think they easily could. You're totally right. Let's see. Jets take Olu versus Chicago. Now I'm like looking this thing up. Let me see. Pierce loves Daniels. Let's see. What did I do wrong? Tell me about it. This isn't realistic, Mario. See, if I took a fat L, I'm completely with it. This isn't realistic. I'm so interested. What did I get wrong? Let me see. Oh yeah, good point. The stupid thing said needs, and I just listened to it. Let's see. Wild not giving O-line to the Titans. See, this now we're gonna do the same draft again, but I'm gonna listen to smarter people than me in the comments section. I like it. So start draft. Let's go Caleb Williams. Let's go Drake Maye. I think that part's easy. Like that at this point. I still think the Raiders make a lot of sense, which is fun. MHJ for Pats also works if they wanted to go with that, but they're just not ready yet, right? I won't be surprised if the Patriots look at their quarterbacking options. I think they would consider a trade for Fields. I really do. But they are so bad that I won't be shocked if they get a Godfather offer from somebody like the Raiders, which is really all I'm looking at, right? Let's see. Does that work? Yeah, sure. It works. Raiders may go Knicks. In this case, I'm going to rely on the whole he likes Jaden Daniels thing from Antonio Pierce. They take a haul. They draft Jaden Daniels. This works for now. Then Marvin Harrison Jr. just makes too much sense if they get all the way to 4. Raiders are desperate, so this could easily work. But 5, what do we think? Chat, what do we think the Chargers do? Sell me. OT? It is OT? See, because I was thinking that they might want Alt. I thought Alt would make a lot of sense there. Just because Harbaugh wants to ground and pound is at least what comes to my mind, right? So they desperately need a tackle. All right, so Alt goes. And then the Giants could take a receiver. I could see a receiver in New York. But also, if their line doesn't get any better, people are going to get fired. So a lot of things could work. I think Neighbors makes sense. I think at this point, Neighbors is going to be the highest on their board, if I had to guess. Their O-line is so bad. And they do need size, but I don't know. Let's see. We'll go with Neighbors for now, just because we can. And not to mention, I think that it squeezes us a little bit. So the Titans, do they need a tackle? Because I could see the Titans. Everybody is forgetting that Olu is very good. And at this point, Olu might make a lot of sense. Let's see, Titans need OT, then Olu might work his way in. Maybe Tyrese Fuaga gets in. Jeez, Dillard's their left tackle? That sucks. Yeah, that's bad. Okay, so this could easily be Olu. This is exactly why I wanted to check with you guys. Because, oh man, yeah, you're right. If it's Jalen Duncan, oh gosh, that's gross. And then the Falcons could take all kinds of people, but I think Turner still makes a lot of sense. I really do. That I think that the Falcons could easily, if they get their quarterback settled, go with a guy like Turner. But beyond that, I also think that a quarterback could work if they wanted to go with that. I think that I don't think that they're going to Jones over an edge defender, but I'll tell you who they aren't taking is Rome Odunze, right? Because the Falcons easily could need a DB, right, John? I wonder if they would want one a little later in the draft. There are a lot of good DBs as they get a little later. But Flex Diggs, I don't think they need another receiver. They have Drake London. They have Kyle Pitts. I completely understand that they could. But Bradley, ironically, I'm not trying to do this to definitively say Rome will be there. It's more that looking at this, I think people are basically just sleeping on how high the linemen could go. Right. And I'm with you, Mario. I think that actually makes a ton of sense, and I appreciate that. They trade with Minnesota in a deal that I'm going to force it. Sorry, bud. They trade with Minnesota. They're going to send both their twos for 8. I don't even know if that works. But the Vikings come up and they want McCarthy. And I want to know how far down this silly board I have to scroll. Let's see. JG's at 52. Okay, sure, Trevor. But you could easily be Broncos. Why wouldn't Minnesota? I think Minnesota needs a quarterback. I personally think that Kwesi's feeling a little bit of heat there, Mario. And I do not put Bo Nix in my top 20 players, personally. But so then you get to the Bears. I think it's Minnesota just for fun. But so yeah. I believe it. More to say, anyways, that like 8 does feel right, doesn't it? Where somebody would trade up. Now they might not. They might want to wait until 9 because the further you can wait, the better, right? But then at this point, I could easily see a Dunze falling to the Bears. And I promise I'm not doing this to kit out, oh, Robert just wants to make a Dunze to the Bears a thing. It's more to say that when, like, Eric, tell me what you don't like about it. I'm intrigued. What don't you like? So, Mario, I will tell you, in my opinion, right? I don't think you're trading with the Jets because I don't think the Jets are trading, right? The pick has to be for sale. And I don't think the Jets, especially if the Jets start to feel a little pressure from the little mini run we've got on offensive line, want to move. Maybe they do. Maybe that would surprise me, right? Now, I'll tell you what's funny, okay? Because I think this is hilarious. The boy, Donald. Say those guys you quoted again. You quoted Devontae Adams. You quoted T. Higgins. Those guys are second rounders. Now, obviously they ended up quite a bit better than their draft status, but it is always intriguing to me when people go, "Oh, Lad McConkey, he looks like Cooper Kupp, who was a third rounder." It's the same criticism I got about Jackson Smith-Jigba, where I looked at him and I saw Amon-Ra St. Brown, a third rounder. I think he was a third rounder. I don't think he was a fourth rounder, but you have to remember that these guys you're comping them to, what was their draft pedigree? It does make a difference because a lot of times the NFL actually follows that logic more than you'd realize. But that's the thing, Eric. I actually think that you could trade back if you wanted to, or maybe you take a Brock Bowers type. It's totally doable. A lot of things work. We'll see what Donze tape another time. For now, let's watch a little bit more LSU, and then I gotta pack it up. If I could, I would stream all night, and we would watch Brock Bowers. I've pulled tape for Keon Coleman. Like, we would watch all kinds of guys. We just don't have the time for it. Okay. That ball is really underthrown. Do the Giants look at this deep wide receiver class and take a tackle first and say a wide receiver? I think they think about it, Alex, but I don't know. Part of me wonders, just talking to you, Alex, like, would the Giants really give up on Evan Neal that fast? They just drafted the guy. Top 7. Like, you might need to. Don't get me wrong. He's been bad. But with Neighbors, you can at least feel like at least with Neighbors, you can feel like you did something really meaningful. But who knows? Maybe they take a second round receiver and they call it. The whole move him to right tackle. I do think, Eric, for what it's worth, if polls like Mario. Oh, that's not great. What is this, 4th down? Sprint out. Leave the ball a little inside. The old leave the ball a little inside trick. Works every time. That's the thing, Donald. Data actually says second round receiver is better value than first round wide receiver. If you listen to the podcast, I'm sure you do. I'm a much bigger fan of trading down from this pick. Like, I don't know who would offer you for anybody at this stage. Maybe there's somebody that thinks that Rome Odunze is that dog. Like, maybe somebody is dying for Johnny Newton. Maybe somebody else wants Rome Odunze. If I got to choose, like Mario actually complained about earlier, I totally think Mario's right. In the real world, I think that the Bears become either the Bears or the Jets become the target because every pick you don't have to pay for, NFL players don't want to pay, or NFL teams don't want to pay for, right? So if the Jets hang up the phone because they don't want to move, then all of a sudden the bidding war is to come up to 9. But it's like, and that's only because 10 is the cutoff. You have to do this before Minnesota because Minnesota would just take him, probably. If the quarterback is good, they would just do it. So then at this point, maybe it's Knicks, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I'm super down for the Bears to trade down, add an extra pick, take whatever receiver you can get. It's part of why I'm watching. It's part of why I'm watching Brian Thomas, right? Is because I want to get to know these receivers a little later in the draft. They don't have to be crazy later. Like, while I would love the Bears to just draft Keon Coleman, I doubt it, right? But there is something, just telling you right now, like, Donald, there is a part of me, sue me, the data says take the second round wide receiver. My heart says, well, the higher we pick him, the better he is. I mean, can you blame me? Like, it's so easy to do, isn't it? Isn't it? To say, oh, well, I picked him in the first round. He's got to be good. Like, and there is part of me that just really wants a 1A, 1B. Really wants it. Really wants it. And having DJ Moore be Deontay Johnson and George Pickens be George Pickens would not be bad. Would not be bad. It just might not be the Bengals, right? And that's the thing, Alex. I could completely see it look completely different. We'll have to see. It's the truth, Falco. Like, it gets so tough. Man, if we did, that'd be awesome. That's the truth, though, the boy. I'm actually just challenging. When you said Devontae Adams, what I'm really doing is just trying to challenge you to make a better comp, which I think you can do. Man, this guy moves really gracefully. Look at this. Beautiful jerky motion right there. Look at that. Look at that. Boom. Vert. It's so funny because this team has 2 guys that are just wickedly fast. No, I think that there's a better chance that Keon Coleman is AJ Brown, not Devontae. I think they're just very different guys. I don't think he is. I hope he's AJ Brown. I think there's just a better chance that he's that he's AJ Brown than Devontae specifically. Atlanta trades up to 3 with the Patriots. The Patriots take a doomsday. That'd be hilarious. It would be. Donald, don't think too hard or you're going to talk yourself into it. Screw it. I control this stream. I make the rules here. I do have this, right? Yes. All right. This game's awesome. And I'm going to show it off. I have like 15 minutes. I have not watched Adonai Mitchell, and I should, but I haven't. All right, so you're going to see two prospects that are cool. One of them is going to make you feel really cool at parties, right? So you're watching, I think he's number 1, Kalen Carson. Kalen Carson moves like a spider person. Look at the length, look at the size, look at the movement kit right here. I mean, even just on this play. Really, really nice physical corner out of Wake Forest. Like, he's just a good mover, and he's competitive, and I was heartbroken he wasn't at the Senior Bowl. But my favorite thing about this is that Kalen Carson is a requisite physical NFL corner, and you're going to get a really fun game from Keon Coleman against Kalen Carson on plays exactly like this. Why do I like Coleman? Because he can do this. Look, watch him protect Jordan Travis on this slant route. It's physical. At this moment, this is the NFL. This is what the NFL is, right? Like, the NFL is, it's not that the route is anything crazy. Kalen Carson's sitting on it, as a matter of fact, because Kalen Carson, if you would like to sound cool at parties, is shadowing. Like, he's shadowing Coleman, which I think is badass. But Travis is just going to throw the ball up. This might as well be a go ball. And Coleman hauls it in. He's just more physical. And you're going to see some sweet battles, depending on how much we get out of this. But, like, what I love about Coleman is that he's just more physical than the absurd majority of the guys he goes up against. And there he trips. Almost throws an interception. You can see Coleman tries to put the footwork on, and he has the footwork to punt return. You got to remember, Coleman is their punt returner. Like, he returns punts at like 6'3". Football's a physical game. And Keon Coleman defines physicality. Let's see, 3rd and 7. Where's Travis looking? Is he looking over the middle? Yeah, the boy. Coleman's the one who doesn't separate. Statistically speaking. Not the platonic ideal of Velus Jones. That's probably the guy we talked about earlier, Anaya Smith. Yeah, it's not true at all, if you ask me. The separation thing. Like, Florida State's offense does a lot of this. We're stopped. Meh. It's just a slap fade. Well, the boy, you're watching Keon's tape now. Flex digs, I think so. I think he's getting franchised. And then I won't be surprised if the Bears work out a deal, but a lot of that's also just because I want them to. Second and 15. Motion him in. True one-on-one with Carson. I really like Keon Coleman's like POS attitude. Bang. It's simple. It's not even a real block, but like, you can tell, can't you? Keon Coleman he's got a very George Pickens-like attitude, which I don't think is anything wrong. Like, he's just a scrapper. Is this a design QB run? No way. Jordan Travis can move, by the way. Like, Kudos to Jordan Travis. His pocket footwork is fun. He leaves a lot to be desired, in my opinion, when it comes to accuracy. Like, there are a bunch of things that I think he could have done to make his receivers look ultimately better. But he's he's a fun dude. He being Travis, like I'm really intrigued to see where Jordan Travis gets drafted, because when I watch his tape, there are definitely more moments of, oh, okay, we can play a little bit, than I think I expected from him. I would love to. Miles. DTR all over again is a great way to put it. And Jordan, I was shocked to this day. I was really surprised that DTR went as low as he did, because I remember watching him having the same reaction, saying, okay, we can play a little bit. And then we could play a little bit. We just weren't better than an NFL veteran. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So, Alpha, for what it's worth, I think that the Bears. So let me see. If the Bears got Neighbors and Keon Coleman, I don't know what I'd do with myself, Miles. That would be like, is this real life? What is this? And so here's a sweet rep from Kalen Carson. Like, Jordan, to me, it is hard for me to love Keon Coleman and not appreciate that Kalen Carson wins a physical battle with him. Now, this probably gets flagged, realistically. In fact, I don't even know if it is going to get flagged in this game. Keon, at this point, by the way, and this is where wide receiver teching is so hard to talk about. Keon's expecting the ball to be back here. Like, when Keon is running this slot fade, he's not trying to dust the guy so much as he's posting him up, right? So, basketball, which I suck at, unsurprisingly. It's the whole back against the guy, and then you hold your hand out. You want the ball out there, right? With the guy at your back. Football, it just looks a little different. Where at that point, you're posting up the guy with your hands, and you want the ball over your shoulder. Keon does what he can to try to fish the ball out of the air anyways. And I agree with you. It is ultimately DPI. But it is. He is a power forward, playing wide receiver. But I love the physicality that we see. 4 in motion. There's a couple sweet reps in here that I want to get to. So, I think that's Keon up there. Watch the footwork on this one. This is sick. Like, that release is nice. What, a hop step? Man, it's not even a hop step. It's like, comes off the line, takes one option step, and then hard jerks inside. That's nice. Now, Jordan Travis doesn't want to throw him the ball there, which is separate. But this is where I personally thought Travis's ball precision hurt Coleman more than it hurt a lot of his other receivers. Because I do tend to think that Keon needs an NFL guy that's basically going to throw him the ball with certain timing anyways, and he's going to throw it to the right spot, and then Keon will go get it for you. More so than the separators that win so well in college, because when Malik Neighbors is Malik Neighbors open, how could you possibly miss him, right? And that's the key here. It's like, imagine it this way. I think we kind of talked about this before, Donald, but imagine it this way. I think Keon Coleman is outstandingly good at getting 1 to 1/2 yard open, right? The length of his arms. And so he can post you up and give you an area to throw over. And Jordan Travis, bless his heart, isn't good enough to put the ball where he earned the space, right? Like, Keon is winning areas of the field, but then the ball doesn't reach those areas. But I wouldn't penalize Keon for that, because the expectation is that an NFL quarterback would be able to paint that a little bit better. And I tend to agree with you, Jordan. I think that while N'Keal Harry did look pretty similar, like I think that Keon looks so athletic at the catch point that I wouldn't personally worry about it. But hey, I guess you never know. Trey Benson's a lot of fun. The runner, he scoots. I honestly don't know, John. I really couldn't tell you, but I'll tell you he did it to Brendan Rice. Like, so that separation doesn't decrease in the NFL, or is it that he's just because he's bodying people? It's the bodying people thing, Eric. Plus taking advantage of leverage when you get it. Kayla's just so physical, which I appreciate. He's going to take his pound of flesh on every play when he gets the chance. Here's Kalen coming in like a missile. I really loved this game from Carson. Like, he's just going to take his pound of flesh. Miles, I'm really curious to see what the Bears do at running back. I just don't think they have the resources to get tremendously better, but I guess we'll see. For a guy like Keon Coleman, I think this is a really solid route. That's a really that's a quality stop that we create a little bit of separation of at the top, but you have to throw this thing with anticipation or we're just never going to take advantage of it. Right? Screen. In the modern yak dominated NFL. Yeah, 4P. It's AJ. That's the answer. It's AJ Brown. Especially when he can do that. Did you say 4P yak dominated NFL? Is that what we said? What if you do have the footwork to break a tackle? Kayla's just a little late getting down here, and Keon does the rest. That is just comedy. That is high comedy that we get that play right there. Not that it's a complete point prover. It's more to say that he's not that slow, right? He's probably not outrunning anybody. The idea would be that he's going to break tackles with size and physicality. Oh my gosh, did Keon just catch that? Was that Keon? No, but that was nasty. That is a sweet catch. So, in my opinion, this is one of those routes that I think is really funny because it shows both and, right? Like, here's where we see Keon Coleman and Kalen Carson both being extremely physical. And as the rep progresses, I would argue Kalen defensively holds, Keon pushes off, but he creates separation with that physicality and then gets to the boundary. It's just not that often that you see Keon Coleman lose a physical battle, especially when it's extended. The fact that he maintains his, I don't know, I like the fact that he maintains his balance. But obviously, you don't want to push off. But to me, when I watch Coleman, I see better footwork than the lumbering big man that can't separate that a lot of people bring up, right? Oh, I think they probably did throw OPI, if I had to guess. Oh, yeah, they did. Now, he may totally, I don't know. For all I know, like you're saying, Donald, you could end up with a N'Keal Harry. Eric, I hate to say it. Isn't it obvious? Isn't it obvious? Do you need me to explain it to you, Eric? Man, is this Benson again? Somebody was asking earlier about the running back. Benson's a lot of fun. I don't know if he's the answer, and I don't know if the Bears have the capital to spend on him. But he can scoot. No, is this Bell? No, that's Benson. That's Benson. Bell is 6. Yeah, he can fly. Adunze is a good runner. Just Eric, I wasn't being condescending. He is a good route runner, but moreover, he's big. He's pretty fast, and he was on a team that wins. And when you're on the team that wins, you get a lot of credit. Whereas Keon Coleman was on a team that played in the ACC. So despite the fact that he did a lot of good things, I mean, Florida State just wasn't that big a deal. And there's a bunch of crazy stuff that I could show you. There's a couple catches that are just like nasty. I don't know if they're in this game specifically, but Adunze was a star. And when you gain that star power, people care. And when they did air it out, Jordan, they spread the ball around quite a bit. Like, you'll just go through major stretches of the game where FSU will roll with somebody else. So, Florida State had Jaheim Bell, they had Johnny Wilson, they had Keon Coleman, they had all kinds of players, right? And I'm not trying to say, Jordan, that I know this happened or Mario, but it almost felt watching this team as if they had put together an all-star team and that they were calling plays like it, because it's almost as if they'll go through series and stretches where they go, you're the guy this time, you're the guy this time. And there's nothing wrong with that. Look at Jaheim Bell separate here. Look at the tight end hit the seam. Like, is it Keon's fault that his teammate is open? No. But you don't feel like Keon is dominating the same way that a lot of these other guys felt like they were dominating, because FSU's solution wasn't to force it. See, okay, I know it's simple, but like, look at this, man. Look at this. Donald, you in here? Again, this is a physical corner. Post up? Yeah. All right. It didn't even look hard. Just yeah, all right. Touchdown. It's me. What are you gonna do about it? Like, it is as if I'm watching the immovable object when I watch him play receiver. At least that's how it feels to me. Do I love him? Absolutely. Right? But it's just power forward play. I like the way Jordan put it. And again, oh yeah, the boy, that was one-handed. And then, damn. I said dang. I know it's not much because this is a route he's not targeted on. But it's the stop start that I really appreciate from Keon. quick stop, like jerky motions. What do people call him though? Like overselling his, like he overacts his routes. You get a feel of suddenness. I get a feel of suddenness when I watch Keon Coleman. Sinks his hips is exactly what I'm looking for. Like he can stop start. He can break inside. I really think, Mario, you talked about how his offense was too cookie cutter. I believe it because when I watch him move, I see a player much better than a lot of the routes in the offense that we ended up getting. Man, look at these two go to battle. Look at these two go to battle. Hard step inside, get the hands off of me. Like, I have no idea where the route is intended to go, but he wins all kinds of space for a throw in the corner. Jordan, is there another touchdown in this game? Or did we already see the one? Because around here, look, I don't want to say I lose interest, but once you get to 10 to 34, that's what I thought. So he ends up with 3 touchdowns in the Wake Forest game? Man. See, I thought there was another one. What a strike. Oh, that's Keon? So, it's not the same. Eric, if you're still here, tell me this doesn't remind you of A.J. Brown. Is it fast? No. Right? But he plays his leverage and he gets over the top because the other corner feels like they have to get their hands on him. Right? And it is beating man, Donald. I guess when I think anytime flex digs, I'm going to pop out here soon, anyways. I guess, Donald, to me, beating man is all that matters. As a receiver, your coach should teach you how to beat zone, which, if you can't beat zone, that would be really weird. Because zone is a matter of sitting down and getting to the right spot, and more of, in my opinion, a quarterback and a concept problem than it is man. In man, you have to win mano a mano, and that's it. But that's just my opinion. If I had to pick 2 non-QB players in, I would have to watch more Johnson to really know. Has Johnson been any good in man situations? Or has it just been that he's been bad? If I picked any 2 non-QB players that could realistically, the Bears could realistically get that they could do. If you wanted to improve the Bears overnight, I feel like a quarterback's a cheap shot, so I won't do it. I think a lot of receivers make them a lot better. I really do. I think they need an X receiver, personally. So I don't want to say Keon just because we're watching him. But Keon would be awesome. I think Thomas could be cool, but I don't know Thomas super well. Lad McConkey could be fun, but that's just talking wide receivers. I think the Bears need an edge rusher. I just don't know when they would get one. If Chop somehow fell, that could be fun, but I don't know. Maybe like a Zach Frazier. Because Zach's really good. Or a Graham Barton. Edge would be a solid one. You guys are saying MHJ and Neighbors. He said that you can realistically get. And yes, you could go with Cam Kitchens, Tyler Nubin, but Mario, I think there are so many solid so many solid safeties. That's not to pick on those. Like Tyler Nubin is sweet. And Leonidas I did. We'll have to talk about him later. But there are so many of these safeties. Look, I'm by no means trying to tell you that you can't draft a Cam Kitchens, Tyler Nubin, but I sit here and I look at guys like I always forget his name. It's there it is. Like Keaton Oladapo looks sweet. I think Jalen Simpson is awesome. I think obviously Cam Kitchens is just super rad. Let me see. Is there one other safety that really pops for me? Not a huge Sione Vaki guy. Everybody loves Sione Vaki. I don't know. I just don't see it. Um, like that's the thing. They do value the position, which is awesome. I think that's the thing. You're mentioning that they value a true free safety, but I also think that safety is such a specific position. Oh, how did I not mention Bo Brady? Bo Brady would be so sweet. I think PFF is flat wrong. There are some awesome, awesome players like at this safety position that I think are so sick. And I think those guys could even play for you pretty quickly. I really do. Um, but it would be, I don't know. I think that if you could get an impact safety and an impact receiver, the Bears would take a really nice step forward. Y'all, it's midnight. I'm exhausted. Uh, I gotta get this thing put up on DBB. But until next time, y'all, let me know what you enjoy, what you don't. We'll save some stuff for next draft stream. Tell me what you want on YouTube. Look, I'm not trying to be famous, but if the content could get views, that is awfully helpful. See if I can't get more stuff for building the board. See if I can't get healthy while I'm at it. Um, Let me see. You're gonna be posting what CHGO? What do you mean? But so, anyways, catch you guys soon. Always so much fun getting to hang out with you. Sleep well, and until next time, bear down. Thanks so